Hi, my name is Henry. I encourage you to read the description for this video. Thank you and enjoy.
Black Ops 3 is without exaggeration the most significant game in Treyarch's history. It marks a turning point for not just the studio, but the franchise as a whole. Today, I'm going to break down Black Ops 3 and talk about the positives and negatives I have with the Zombies mode specifically. In this video, we're going to discuss why during much of its life cycle and afterwards, why I found a significant part of it to be disappointing and filled with wasted potential. Now, don't get me wrong, Black Ops 3 overall as a complete package is still the best zombies experience we've ever had. A core problem with Black Ops 3, as we'll discuss throughout much of this, is for every step forward from Black Ops 1 and 2, it takes half a step backwards. Meaning that for every two things Black Ops 3 does right, it does one major thing wrong. And while that may sound like a good ratio, there are some massive cracks on this game's shell. Some may wonder what the value of talking about Black Ops 3 in 2024, over 8 years after its release, and 6 years after its content cycle ended. The reason is that any zombies game released from here on out will be compared to Black Ops 3, just as Black Ops 4 and Cold War were for most of their life cycles. Black Ops 3 with its peak production value, high quality maps, and attention to detail makes it a game that will forever be enshrined in the zombies community. And with Black Ops 6 right around the corner, with an extra year of development, these conversations are especially worth having right now. Now, for some context on my background, I've been playing zombies since day one World at War. I've been to level 1000 on BO3 twice, I've been to round 100 on the majority of the maps solo and co-op. I know the game inside and out and have gotten well over 2,000 hours into it. In short, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this game's core issues. In response, someone may retort, well, you put so much time into the game, so clearly it's not that bad. And what I would say to that is, with my playtime and experience, if anyone should be diagnosing and criticizing the game and its problems, it's me. So, let's begin. Mob of the Dead for Zombies as a mode was groundbreaking. It introduced a more quest-focused gameplay style, along with the setting of the map being intrinsically tied to the story of its four characters in what we thought at the time was an isolated pocket dimension. For Jason Blundell, and what was the campaign team at the time, to strike a home run right out of the gate on top of this massive shift in map design was genuinely impressive. Many say that it's what single-handedly saved Black Ops 2 Zombies. They repeated much of the same successes with the second map they worked on, Origins. Those successes left Blundell as the leading candidate for the leadership position after Black Ops 1 and 2 Zombies creative director Jimmy Zielinski left the studio in December 2014. Unfortunately, I think Mob and Origins receiving the praise they did might have gotten to the team's heads a little bit too much. The first two big maps in BO3 try to ride the coattails of their previous work. Black Ops 3's storyline is a convoluted, pretentious, predictable mess filled with bad characters, poor performances, cringe-worthy writing, and is a massive insult to fans of the old storyline. Black Ops 3 is the epitome of the phrase, jumped the shark. The whole premise of the story is basically to retcon World at War BO1 and BO2 by killing off the Ultimates crew, and instead of just embracing what came before and making it work, Black Ops 3 in essence tries to completely reboot the storyline. More on that later. It comes off as incredibly lazy, nonsensical, and half-hearted. This train wreck of an approach would eventually come barreling into itself in Black Ops 4 because it got so bad that the only way to wrap up the story was for all of our main characters to be killed and fade out of existence. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. At the end of Origins, Treyarch had many different options as to where they could have taken the story. An entire spin-off with premise unrelated to the Ultimates or Victus stories would have been possible. Hell, with the Origins cutscene, they could have ended zombies as a mode altogether. I know Craig and Blundell would have had you believe that they all had it planned out from Origins and that they're somehow geniuses, but this is obviously not true based on the pre-release builds of Black Ops 3 and the sheer disconnect between premise in BO2 Origins and premise in The Giant just 2.5 years later. So let's see how they just messed this all up so badly. Shadows of Evil in essence is a pretty unambitious and uninteresting sequel to Mob of the Dead. Now before you click off, let me explain. Shadows of Evil starts off with 4 completely irrelevant characters who just so have happened to be bad people who have sinned in some way in their own isolated universe as established in the intro cutscene. If that sounds familiar, that's because it's almost identical to Mob of the Dead. But this time, instead of 4 recognizable celebrities who give good, believable performances, we have 2 recognizable celebrities who give very mediocre and phoned-in performances, and 2 other people you've never heard of. I have a challenge for you. If you can name all 4 characters off the top of your head, first name and last name, and not just say, the boxer, the cop, the magician, or the dancer, you'll win a prize. Basically, the only relevance this map has to the broader story is that this is where Richtofen gets the summoning key, and this event in turn is the beginning of Black Ops 3's story. After this, there's a massive timeline gap between this map and the next that was explored in the zombie comics, which didn't even exist at this point. So we have no idea what's going on. It's also funny to me that the map that tried to incorporate more personal character drama through the radios and rituals is the map with far less interesting and dynamic characters than Mob of the Dead. As a departure from Mob of the Dead, you have a new guiding character. The Shadow Man leads our characters to essentially open Pack-a-Punch. You need to get 4 items that are related to the locations and sins of each character, and take them to 4 specific rooms around the map to place them on an altar and complete a boring ritual where a nameless character that helped them kill in the intro cutscene basically tells them how awful they are. While you run around in a circle, keepers infinitely spawn. This is kind of exciting the first time you do it, but it just becomes another chore among all the others. When the game launched, these rituals would take an eternity, but were updated later to significantly reduce the time it took to finish them. Also, at launch, the ritual pieces were tied to the player who picked them up, and they were not shared inventory, making this map basically unplayable with randoms for the first month. If you were one of the only ones doing the rituals, it would take over 5 minutes to finish them. And if you just so happen to miss picking up one of the parts because some other idiot picked it up, you couldn't open Pack-a-Punch. It was a big reason this map was hated so much at launch. Once the Pack-a-Punch is open, that basically opens a rift that the Apothicons swarm through and quickly take over the universe our characters are trapped in. And a giant Apothicon creature covers the sky and is revealed that the Shadow Man, who's been stringing along our characters the entire time, is an evil tentacle monster who's still wearing his suit because this is actually a kid's game. Beast mode on this map is simply Afterlife from Mob of the Dead, meaning it's used to power basically everything on the map and is a core part of getting Pack-a-Punch open. One big issue with bringing this back in the launch map is Call of Duty generally has a launch audience and a post-launch audience, meaning a lot of players playing Shadows of Evil for the first time didn't play Mob of the Dead. Which is why cutting out the extremely simple and genius tutorial that Mob of the Dead had by spawning you in an afterlife, immediately presenting you with a wall you could walk through, was a big mistake. Sure, there's a beast mode altar and spawn and items that you can only interact with in beast mode, but to this day, I see new players completely miss or ignore the altars. Beast Mode also gives those new players the wrong impression because you'd rightly think this tentacle monster mode you can go into and slap zombies around and pull them in is meant to be used for combat, which it absolutely isn't. And the fact is, zombies that you kill in Beast Mode just respawn and aren't removed from the rounds. Which is why it's even more baffling that the trailer for Shadows of Evil shows Beast Mode being used to kill zombies and nothing else. Afterlife, on the other hand, makes it very clear that it's not lethal by teleporting the zombies you shock right in front of you, and not having similar visual feedback with Beast Mode was just a bad design. On top of that, Beast Mode is nowhere near as tense or interesting as Afterlife, for the simple reason that with Afterlife, you had to plan out a route and do as much as you could while keeping an eye on the timer so you could make it back to your body. Beast Mode just takes you right back to the altar when the timer runs out with no penalty, which compounds the feeling of it just being busy work you need to do every match. Afterlife also replaced Quick Revive on the map, and even in co-op, when you would go down, you would fall into Afterlife and be able to revive yourself, making it always relevant in a match. The only time Beast Mode is relevant after the map is open is to revive a teammate. But 90% of players that I've played with either don't know this feature exists or completely forget about it when someone goes down. It also ends your Beast Mode when you revive somebody, even if your bar is still full. Just more bad visual language from this map, confusing new players once again. Although this is done for balance, this could have been communicated so much better. Sure, Beast Mode has some cool tricks and glitches in a speedrun, which the developers didn't intend, by the way, but for casual gameplay, Afterlife was way more interesting, more useful to the player, and fit Mob of the Dead far better as a concept. The Margwa is the new mini-boss on Shadows of Evil, and is an alright enemy. It adds a bit of tension having to take out all three of the heads while they're running down the map's narrow alleyways and corridors. It makes him a pretty oppressive force when you haven't fought him before. One cool thing with the Margwa that I think was added later in a patch is that when he spawns in, all three of the heads are open for a brief window, meaning that you can hypothetically kill him right as he spawns if your weapon does enough damage. Although it can be pretty annoying when multiple spawn in later in game, and health scaling on his heads makes double tap required if you want to kill him normally at high rounds. The Civil Protector is a copy-paste of the GI unit for multiplayer, which little did we know that he would be reused not once, but twice in 2 different games after this one. You obtain him by grabbing 3 fuses from each part of the map's branching pathways, behind doors you would never normally buy. After that, you need to put them in a generator in the rift part of the map. He's fairly worthless other than for the fact that when he drops from the sky, he has a blast radius that kills the zombies around him when he comes in. The catch to this is that for whatever reason, he also one-shots the Margwa, making a boss that would have been extremely annoying to deal with because of the health scaling into a complete joke. The Civil Protector is also very buggy when it comes to reviving teammates. Sometimes he'll just stand next to you and let your teammate bleed out. Honestly, other than the cool one-hit kill for the Margwas, the Civil Protector feels just like a gimmick that under normal circumstances doesn't add much to the map and isn't at all necessary. The Easter egg or main quest is pretty short, awful, and is mostly padding. Oh, and did I mention this Easter egg can only be fully completed with 4 players? Obtaining and upgrading the swords in a 4-player game usually takes everyone at least 30 minutes, and those quests are just more tedious soul boxes and rituals. You have to kill 4 set of Margwas each round, and the flag step takes 20 to 30 minutes because it's basically a wave defense at each location, with infinitely respawning meatballs, and at the end of each you have to once again end the round before you can do another flag. Small fun fact, the danger closest Gobblegum makes you completely invincible to the meatballs, making the flag step fairly easy with classic Gobblegums only, but this wasn't well known at launch. The issue with these first 2 steps is that they aren't interesting and are just padding, because in reality, there just isn't much to this Easter egg at all. It feels like a last-minute stitched together quest. You get the sword to give to the keepers that you reanimate by taking the flag to the 4 ritual locations around the map, who with the swords will then in turn allow you to fight the Shadow Man. The Shadow Man fight is pretty bad and basically glorified target practice. The keepers you give your swords to will shoot beams that break the Shadow Man's weird Apothicon bubble, and then you can damage him. He will teleport around after you do enough damage, and your goal is to get him to the altar where you did the final Pack-a-Punch ritual and hold square or X at the base to trap him in the summoning key. If you end up failing this, the game will spawn a Margwa and you need to go up to all 4 of the keepers again to restart it. This is where the Easter egg ends solo and you pretty much get nothing for doing it this way. With 4 players, this is where the final step begins. Upon trapping the Shadow Man, a giant worm will appear in his place, for some reason. This step is convoluted in all the worst ways. I'm not going to go through all the nuances here because this section is already long enough. But essentially, everyone needs to shock a fuse box at each tram station in beast mode, and one player needs to take the tram and then run it into the giant worm in the center of the map, and afterwards another player, after shocking his fuse box, will need to run to the center of the map and shock 3 of the keepers from the boss fight that have now appeared in the center of the map, and they continue to power the swords and shoot a massive beam to kill the Apothicon in the sky. And that's it, Easter egg is done. Richtofen comes through a portal, yoinks the summoning key, and basically tells our 4 characters to go pound sand. And canonically, these characters die shortly after this, making them once again completely irrelevant and disposable. Shadows of Evil is also littered with pointless side quests that were a total waste of time and should have been cut. And when I say pointless, I mean absolutely worthless. Like, why is this even in the game type side quests? The shield upgrade on this map, if you can even call it that, requires you to kill 12 zombies at a time with the rocket shield 12 times! The rocket shield is complete garbage. If you don't have an insta-kill, you basically can't do this after round 20. And what do you get for that headache? The rocket shield gets slightly more durability and 1 more charge on the rocket shield. It's worthless. There's also a free Mega Gobblegum quest on this map, but you need to use all 4 of your Widow's Wine grenades to get it, and doing that in the middle of a round? Yeah, no thanks. There's a pointless trip mine upgrade, and it's about as useless as it sounds. At least it turns it into a donut. Or cakes. That's kinda cool. Lastly, there's the Margwa mask that, unlike the other side quests in this section, is useful because it significantly reduces the damage you take from the Margwa. The only problem is the quest to get it is very poorly designed and very frustrating. After opening Pack-a-Punch and acquiring the sword, Margwa hearts will appear on signs all around the map. When you take the tram and in buried sharpshooter style, you need to hit each of the set hearts successfully on each tram ride. But the hearts themselves are extremely small and very finicky to hit, especially with the erratic movements of the tram. So while the mask is helpful even on high round games, I never find myself getting or ever wanting to get it. Some smaller gripes I have with Shadows are also that the Bloodhound is the biggest wasted potential in starting pistol history. I was insanely disappointed when I saw this map had a unique starting pistol, only to Pack-a-Punch it for the first time and realize all it does is become a discount Mustang and Sally. Coming off of Origins with the Boomhilda, I was shocked at how lazy this was. This one might be a nitpick, but why make the perk locations random if you're just going to tell people where they were anyway? The rocket shield, despite all the marketing and emphasis on it in the trailers, when in the map itself, was completely useless by around 20 and doesn't even give you points for using it. Lastly, why on earth do they make you have to wall run over a pit in the Pack-a-Punch room? The only thing this serves is putting one of multiplayer's movement gimmicks into zombies. But just think about it. If you're lagging or start lagging when you do this, you will die every single time. It only serves to hurt the player and kill you in an extremely cheap way, and yet they put it in the map regardless. To piece all of this together, this map uses the same branching path layout that has been used in many maps since Shi No Numa, reuses the afterlife mechanic from Mob of the Dead, features characters that have very similar setup to the mobsters as I established, a specialist weapon that when upgraded is vaguely similar to the Hell's Retriever, and a wonder weapon that essentially shoots Gersh devices, and that is a living creature you stick your hand into. It's not very original. I mean, come on, Half-Life did this in the 90s. You think Blundell didn't play Half-Life? While adding tentacles and Lovecraft was new for zombies, it's been done in many games before and since, is my point. The strengths of Shadows of Evil are in its refinement. not in its innovation to say the very least, although using the term refinement might be a bit generous. Shadows is hardly a bad map, but the magic the community sees in this map, I don't for the most part. And as a side note, the visual filter Treyarch put on this map specifically is very distracting after the first few playthroughs, especially after playing any of the other maps in the game for prolonged periods of time. One big issue with all maps in BO3, as we'll discuss, is that the first 10 minutes of every match are spent doing the exact same thing and buying the exact same doors every match you play. Shadows is no different in that respect and is arguably one of the worst offenders. The 4 rituals are very easy and can be done as early as round 1, but the time investment of doing it every match really hurts replayability. And if I'm going for the sword on top of that, this map quickly loses my interest. When I'm setting up for high rounds, the first 30 minutes of this map is dedicated to rituals, then the sword eggs. It's painfully slow, and for that reason, I genuinely don't like the setup process on this map because unlike BO3's other maps, it's not very dynamic, especially in co-op when doing the Easter egg. Dealing with people moving from sword location, making zombies despawn, on top of the fact that you're likely going to be doing this on a low round, bogs down that already tedious process even further. You may be confused by my use of the term dynamic. What I mean by that is how organic does it feel to do every step or quest alongside the gameplay. Shadows for me royally fails in that aspect. During the rituals, you hoard the keepers in the same way every time, and the eggs, if you're doing them on low rounds, play the exact same way every time. And the sword upgrade with the Margwas isn't much better. Doing the ritual circles each round is extremely tedious. They feel like filler, and unlike Mob of the Dead, where each part of the plane, for example, required a different solution and presented different gameplay challenges, the rituals and each part of the sword do no such thing. It's incredible to me that this game's one and only launch map feels like it's lacking in creativity and depth compared to a DLC map in the middle of Black Ops 2 that had a lot less time and resources. To wrap this up, I understand why the developers wanted something familiar gameplay and setup-wise to Mob of the Dead, as it was extremely popular and well received. For many, that map saved Black Ops 2 Zombies when it came out. Going into a new game, you want your main launch and first DLC, more on that later, to grab people's attention and reflect the season going forward. But Shadows of Evil failed at that miserably. There isn't enough new in this map, and what was there made people extremely cautious and worried about the future. It exemplifies why this isn't a good map to launch with. It may surprise people who are in the BO3 hive mind bubble, but this map was widely disliked upon Black Ops 3's release. It was alienating to casual players, considering this was the only map they could play without the season pass. High rounders found the map dull at launch with all the bugs, and Easter egg runners were turned off by the 4-player required Easter egg and the flag step. This map at launch just didn't have much appeal, and while my opinion has softened on the map somewhat over the years, it's also largely stayed the same. Shadows of Evil is a pretty average map at best. I find it extremely overrated, and the revisionist history that declares this one of the best maps of all time is insane to me. High rounds on Shadows solo or co-op can be a pretty good time, and it's the saving grace for this map because while generic, the layout is solid. The wonder weapons are good, and the map is spread out enough to facilitate 4 people. I'm just sick of hearing about it and constantly seeing it being lauded as one of the best maps of all time, because Shadows of Evil in essence is a flawed map without many ideas of its own. Just because you take styles and themes from other places that haven't been in your franchise before, it doesn't automatically make it groundbreaking. It's all a matter of execution, and in that department, this map falls way short. The giant is Derice, but worse. And trust me, we'll get to that. To kick off the premise story in Black Ops 3, they chose a familiar location that didn't interfere and actually lended itself to BO3's story. Although the reality likely is, this was due to time constraints, and also, what's a safer choice to launch a game with than an updated Derice? Well, the only catch is that when Black Ops 3 launched, you could only play this map as part of the Season Pass. A decision which in retrospect most could agree was a mistake. A mistake that Black Ops 2, despite all the problems with transit and Green Run as a whole, did not make. Having the Giant as a secondary launcher map would have significantly helped ease people into the more quest-heavy experience of Shadows of Evil. Story-wise, this is where Richtofen links back up with the rest of the Primus crew after acquiring the summoning key and a few other events too that we didn't know until later. And this is where it's established in the shocking intro cutscene that was revealed at Comic-Con 2015. Primus Richtofen steps out of the teleporter and domes 1.0 Richtofen in the head. The annoying disconnect is, in this cutscene, Takeo specifically mentions a plan, and the crew seems to be very in sync as to what they're doing. But in the actual map itself, all the dialogue is everyone still talking about how they don't trust Richtofen and they all have no idea what's going on. The purpose of the map was to collect Richtofen 1.0's soul, which we didn't really know at the time, and that's essentially it. There are radios and ciphers on this map that basically spoil and lay out the entire DLC season and the main plot, which is essentially to kill off the entire 1.0 crew and trap their souls in the summoning key, which took some of the wind out of the sails of this game. Regardless, people were still on board with the story by this point because we didn't know how or if the story would deviate at some point. Unfortunately it didn't, but more on that later. The Giant's gameplay and changes are another matter. One of my core issues with the Giant is that BO3's mechanics don't really lend themselves well to a map that was designed for a different game. With wildly different movement and core mechanics from 2009. Trust, we're going to touch on this later. But the hit speed and spawn rates break the map, and not having core BO3 features like the shield and Widow's Wine in turn makes this one of the most frustrating maps in the game. The Wunderwaffe was remade in this map as well, although its implementation in BO3 feels scuffed. In World at War, the Wunderwaffe did have self-damage to the player, and you could zap yourself with it, and on Derice specifically. Not Shinonuma for some reason. It would set the player's health value to 1, and you wouldn't be able to regenerate health after that, making you a one-hit down if you damaged yourself with it. Black Ops 1 largely fixed this, and made the Wunderwaffe do 0 self-damage to the player. The shock effect you would see on your screen when you shoot at close quarters was purely visual and a leftover from World at War. The Wunderwaffe in BO3, on the other hand, does a tiny bit of splash damage to the player, although it's such an insignificant amount of damage that it's not clear to the player that it even exists. This can leave you being red screened for extremely long periods of time without even realizing why. That aspect of it, and without adequately telegraphing the self-damage to the player, I'm convinced that it's either a bug that slipped by the devs or just a flat out terrible bit of game design. Another poor design choice, or bug, who knows, is that when you shoot a horde of zombies, some of them will get stunned by it, but the lightning chain doesn't actually kill them. So they'll break out of the stun and start running again immediately after it wears off. This, especially for new players, is confusing and can lead to people getting killed when they think that the Waff is going to kill those zombies. There's also countless times in BO3 where when using the Wunderwaffe, you get ghost shots, where it doesn't connect with a zombie even when you direct impact them, and it will not cause the chain lightning to happen. And with the slow fire rate, limited ammo, and the reload speed of the Waff can easily get you downed. This is because of a long-standing bug that spans across multiple COD games where splash damage just flat out doesn't work on certain surfaces. These major issues I've pointed out can make certain downs feel like it wasn't your fault at all. My leading theory is that they made the Wunderwaffe in this game do purely splash damage to make it feel more consistent, and also so you wouldn't need to direct impact zombies to get those chain lightnings, in an effort to essentially buff it, likely due to the faster pace of BO3. Unfortunately, this just ends up being the worst of all worlds because of the game engine. This is one of the most inconsistent wonder weapons of all time, when it really shouldn't be. Instead, Treyarch should have just made the Wunderwaffe in BO3 closer to its BO1 counterpart, because that was by far the best feeling version to use. The bug with the splash damage in particular has existed since BO1, maybe even earlier as far as I know. So, Treyarch making the wonder weapon of all things function this way is extremely short-sighted, and these issues should have been fixed during the life cycle of the game, but alas, let's move on. The map contains a new side quest that frustrates me to no end. By obtaining monkey bombs and throwing them into all 3 teleporters while activating them, it allows you to press a button and spawn. This makes the robot outside of the map fire a laser that reflects off the facility sign to reveal a hidden perk buried under some snow. While a cool addition on the surface to add a new perk machine that previously wasn't on either version of Durice, the problem with this new side quest is it's completely random what perk is on the map, and this is predetermined when you start a match. It's 50-50 between Stamina Up, which is an extremely valuable perk in Black Ops 3 at all times, and Deadshot, which is a perk that is damn near useless at best and does absolutely nothing at worst. It would have been far more interesting if it was Stamina Up or Widow's Wine on a cycle, then it might have actually been a choice. However, don't take that suggestion as an endorsement. I'd rather have the perk be static and never change. It's especially annoying when you realize that this is the only map in zombie history to make it completely random if a perk is on it or not. Aesthetically, the snow on the giant takes away from the map's original style and oppressive atmosphere. Personally, I think heavy rain and clouds would have fit the map better, although Shadows of Evil already hit on that beat. The best compromise for the giant would have been to set it at daytime, midday specifically. This change alone, while minor on the surface, would have set it apart tonally from the original map and the rest of Black Ops 3. Regardless, the choice of snow is aggravating, especially when you consider that the next map was also snowy. By the time that we got a map that didn't have snow, myself and many others were sick of snow. It's hard not to judge the giant without thinking of the opportunities they had to expand the facility, add more traps, and add an actual main quest to the map without alienating those casual players I mentioned earlier. The giant in Black Ops 3 could have also been improved significantly if a lot of classic weapons and quality of life features that were added later in BO3's life cycle were retroactively introduced into the giant, to make it feel more like classic Durice. One small example, the fact that the PPSH isn't in this version of the map, to me, is a crime. I know the BO1 version is also guilty of this, but when you consider that they added the RPK to this map late into the life cycle, it makes it sting so much more. The Giant was an alright playground to familiarize yourself with Black Ops 3's mechanics and weapons, but it had very little staying power compared to Durice. While it certainly made Black Ops 3's launch period more bearable for many, in terms of this weird middle ground between a remake and a remaster, it fails at both. Eisendrache is a pretty unambitious and uninteresting sequel to Origins. That's right, folks, you seeing a pattern with these first three maps? They're relying on familiarity over new ideas to entice people to stick with the game. And as we're going to discuss, this map is the most successful of the three at doing that, while still not really rising above its predecessor in any way. Eisendrache's map design problems start as soon as you spawn in. As a regression from Shadows of Evil, where you had 3 different choices as to where you could go beyond the first door, even though it was the illusion of choice because you had to go those 3 ways anyway. In Eisendrache, if we're being realistic, only has 1 way to go from spawn, because to get to the nearest dragon head, the door to your left takes 3 doors, whereas the path to the right only requires 2. Which further cements the sameness every time you play this map. You're taking the exact same path, doing the exact same things for the first 10 minutes every single time you play this map, just like, you guessed it, Shadows of Evil, with somehow even less variety and player choice. A lot of the things that I've said here are common criticisms for Origins. However, I'd argue that map is far more cooperative and dynamic. The difference in gameplay starts as soon as you spawn in on that map, because unlike the bow, the unupgraded staffs all require different steps to obtain them. The randomness of the robots for the wind staff parts, the snow rounds and needing a shovel for the ice staff parts, and needing a buddy to help you get those last 2 lightning staff parts if you don't have stamina up, makes every match of Origins feel fresh, even though you were doing the same things every time. It really was as close to a perfect formula as you could get with that map. Because I never got bored of it. I played that map solely for a year straight, waiting for Black Ops 3 to come out. Let's talk about those dragon heads, shall we? To obtain the initial form of the wonder weapon on Eisendrache, the Wrath of the Ancients, the player must feed 3 dragon heads around the map. This is basically a copy-paste of the dog heads from Mob of the Dead, without any of the thought and consideration. The dog heads on Mob for zombies at the time was a primitive but effective way of introducing a simple quest-style reward in zombies. An important thing to mention is that in Mob of the Dead, the order in which you did these things was very much in the player's hands. The dog heads were spread across a big map and in some pretty tight spaces that would pressure the player to kill maybe a few extra zombies out of necessity to survive, especially if you didn't have Jug. And along with the way you were doing other things as well on the map, making the gameplay of feeding the dogs much more dynamic. Mob of the Dead had incredible pacing. It always felt like you were moving forward. Things were placed in exactly the right spots. You had options as to how you or your teammates wanted to go about it, and the dog heads complemented the map incredibly well. Eisendrache is a perfect example of why mechanics on one map don't always translate to another. That's because Eisendrache has very little to do before the dragon heads are fed, and is a much smaller map in comparison. With the doors being very cheap as well, it means that after the first dragon head, if you're even remotely decent at building points, you'll have more than enough to buy your way to the power switch, which will lead you to the next 2 dragon heads. The reality is that unless you've literally never played the map before, you're going to have all the heads filled on a low round. And unlike mobs, they're all in wide open areas that are easy to train in. It makes this activity, which would provide some unique gameplay challenges because of Mob's excellent layout and map pacing, just another series of tedious soul boxes that are mind-numbing to get through every match. Just like the eggs on Shadows, the dragon heads slow down the map down to a crawl. In Mob of the Dead, when I got the Hell's Retriever after going through the map, feeding the dog heads alongside getting the plane parts, I felt accomplished. Here, when I get the Wrath of the Ancients, I say, thank God that boring garbage is over. It's shallow, lazy, and wastes everyone's time. There are far better ways the player could have obtained the unupgraded bow than this shameless and pointless Mob of the Dead rehash. It honestly feels like Treyarch has no idea why Mob of the Dead worked, not just thematically, but from a gameplay standpoint too. This is clear evidence of that. This map, similar to the Giant, has dogs and dog rounds. And the only reason I'm mentioning the special rounds, unlike the other maps, is because of how infrequently the dog rounds happen, and the problem that comes from having them on this map. For whatever reason, on Eisendrache, dog rounds happen every 8 to 10 rounds, instead of the typical 5 to 7 range that every special enemy round normally happens on. With the key exception of the first dog round, which do happen in the normal 5 to 7 range. So for higher rounds, this makes dog rounds almost worthless and unreliable, and on low rounds, it's extremely irritating because Eisendrache has quite a few soul boxes, as we just went over with the bows. And it's a giant buzzkill and a waste of everyone's time when on round 5 or 6, dogs come in only for most people to still be doing the soul box part of their bows. This map, especially compared to Mob of the Dead, already has really bad pacing in its setup, and this just makes it even worse. You have to wonder why dogs are even on this map at all, because it's the worst of both worlds, and they aren't even new enemies. It only detracts by having them there, and yet Treyarch put them on the map anyways. You may think with this criticism, and of the dragon heads, that oh, it's just 15 to 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. The dog round is only 1 to 2 minutes, so it's fine. The other aspects of the map are far more important. I fundamentally disagree. Here's why. This is game design 101. It's what designers think and spend hours talking about when making games. Because it's not just 1 round or 10 minutes to one person. It becomes the collective experience of hundreds of thousands or even millions of people in your game for years to come. That's why devs care about what they're making. And it's why criticisms like this are extremely important. It all matters. Not to get off topic, but I felt that needed to be said. The Panzer returns in this map as yet another sign of a real lack in creativity. This version's increased health scaling into the high rounds is just obnoxious. If we go back to BO2 Origins, you could easily kill high round Panzers with just your wonder weapons. Or any pack gun with double tap, really. They removed his claw hand and replaced it with shock charges, which are really annoying. They also have god tier tracking. Giving him a ranged option makes it so he gets easy and often unearned damage on the player. Treyarch took all of the skill out of fighting this enemy. The Panzer on BO2 was a range game of keeping distance, dodging his claw hand, and if you did get grabbed, quickly shooting the red light that was displayed. Here, there's no such gameplay depth with this Panzer. Pretty much the only viable way to kill him quickly now at high rounds is with a packed shotgun, shooting directly into the power core on his chest while he's lifted up when you activate the death ray. When making a boss completely immobile is the only reasonable way to kill it, you've made a pretty terrible boss. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Margwa is leaps and bounds above the Panzer in terms of design. This is yet another example of Treyarch just not getting it. One small thing to note is that the danger closest Gobblegum that makes you immune to explosive damage will actually make you immune to the Panzer's shock charges. It doesn't save this mini-boss, but it makes him a lot more tolerable. However, considering that the vast majority of players aren't going to run that, my points still stand. Now, let's go over some of the side Easter eggs on this map real quick, just like Shadows. We'll start off with the Panzer Claw Helmet, since we just talked about the Panzer. This is basically the Margwa mask equivalent for this map. However, it's much worse and far more pointless. You need to find these hidden Panzer claws around the map, and launch them into 3 Panzers and kill them with it to get the helmet. Now this is the fun part. It only reduces the damage of the Panzer's melee attack, not his flamethrower or his shock charges, which are, you know, the most lethal and annoying parts of the new Panzer. Good job, Treyarch. Next, we have the Plunger, which if you're running this map's Easter egg with a squad, you know there's always a guy who wants to get this stupid thing. To get the Plunger, you need to plant the Ragnaroks in the clock tower. This will cause the hand to start moving, and you need to activate the switch in the clock tower to stop the hands on 935. You then need to go into the underground section and wall run next to the pyramid, and you'll be teleported into the same room during the Easter egg where you can grab it off the table. The Plunger makes it so when you kill the Panzer, it will glow with fire for a short time, then when you melee a Panzer, it will insta-kill it. First off, doing this in solo is just awful, as I'm sure you can imagine. You basically need to just guess where the hand is. It's really dumb. Secondly, a huge design fail with this is that the Panzers are actually kinda hard to melee. It feels really buggy. Just like trying to kill the Margwas with the sword on Shadows, this feels equally dumb, because the Panzers are just as lethal at close range, and if you miss with this thing, you'll die almost every single time. I hate everything about this thing. The quest sucks, it's finicky, it gets you killed, it looks dumb, it's totally out of place. My advice, just don't even bother with this thing. The free Gobblegum returns from Shadows. This one's a little easier to do. You just need to grab this plant in the teleporter room, and when you go back in time during the Easter egg, just put it where you picked it up. Then when you come back, you can grab a free random Mega Gobblegum from the fully grown plant. For whatever reason, not to spoil anything, but this would be the last map to have a free Mega Gobblegum Easter egg. I guess they took them out because it lost Activision a couple bucks in Liquid Divinium sales, so I guess it had to go. There's a small side Easter egg with the in plain sight Gobblegum that turns all zombies into skeletons. You shoot 3 skulls with an upgraded bow and bam! That's it. It's cool, but why? The skeletons are quieter than the zombies, they have worse hit feedback when you shoot them, and they're harder to see, so they actually make the game more difficult. But hey, it's there if you want it. So yeah, the side quests in this map are just as pitiful and pointless as Shadows. Let's try to be a little more positive. A gameplay strength for Eisendrache is in its map layout. This map, alongside its bow variety, which we're going to go over very soon, quite nicely accommodate both training and camping playstyles, and there's an abundance of spots for both. The fast travels are very convenient. A personal favorite of mine is when it launches you up from the Undercroft into the courtyard. While the overall layout does make the map quite easy, it's refreshing to be able to just switch locations on the fly for gameplay variety, regardless of the round, and not suffer as a result. I also really like the death ray area and the trap itself. It makes a great training spot even better. Outside of the Panzer, this map has pretty fun high rounds. The sheer number of ways you can get to round 100 plus is pretty commendable. So now, let's discuss the wonder weapons. After obtaining the Wrath of the Ancients, there are 4 elemental upgrades the player can choose from. For the sake of time, unlike everything else, I'm not going to go in depth with all of these upgrade quests because it would take way too long. But I do want to say broadly that these quests are the highlight of the map. I think they're pretty well designed, and honestly, they're a lot more fun to do than the main Easter egg. Like, I really enjoy the kind of friendly rivalries of seeing who can finish their bow first. And just to briefly touch on the quests, they can all be done fairly quickly if all players are of equal skill level. I've run DE a lot, and honest to God, it's usually a different bow that's finished every game, and I think that that's a good sign of a well-designed quest. I want to talk about the 4 bows individually and hopefully dispel some of the long-standing myths in the community about these wonder weapons. Which is why the first thing I want to say is that the lightning bow is not that good. As some of you may know, the lightning bow was hit with a nerf shortly after the map came out. This nerf increases the killing time of the lightning tornado after round 27. I have an example here. I go from round 26 to round 27, and as you can see, it's killing a lot slower past that point. For this reason, after round 27, this makes the lightning bow the only bow that cannot kill a full horde of 24 zombies in one charge shot. Also, because of how slow they die, it makes it quite bad for training. Another downside to this bow, and for this reason I think it's pretty bad for the Easter egg, is that it's not that great at killing panzers. Sure, it lifts them and does a tiny bit of damage to them, so you can line up killing them with your other gun, but this effect is quite redundant when the Death Ray and Ragnaroks already do this, and do it way better and more consistently. Basically what I'm saying is, this bow is very overrated. You should only use it to camp and nothing else. The wolf bow, in my opinion, is by far the least fun to use. First off, the wolf bow does not have any kind of area of effect damage with its charge shot. It shoots out a very narrow, forward-facing cone that even with a full horde bunched up can still miss a few zombies. Damage to the panzers on this bow is really poor too. It might even be the worst in that category, to be honest. Something that wasn't discovered until quite recently is that for whatever reason, the wolf bow does 1 damage to the keeper boss at the end of the Easter egg. Yes, you heard that right, 1 damage. This makes the wolf bow by far and away the worst bow to do the Easter egg with. Also, unlike the other bows, the lack of any kind of lingering effects makes this one only really decent at one thing, and that's training. Even then though, I still don't really ever want this thing. Even with the downsides of the lightning that we just went over, this is without a doubt the worst bow by a pretty wide margin. In the grand scheme of wonder weapons, it's still decent, but not great. We talked about how the lightning bow was nerfed. The void bow, on the other hand, got a massive buff after the map came out. I honestly love it. It ticks all the boxes for me. It feels like no other wonder weapon that we've had before in zombies. I love how far and fast the skulls travel. It makes the radius at which the void bow will get kills absolutely ridiculous. You can shoot it in the courtyard and it will kill zombies all the way up to the death ray. It's also great against panzers, and because of the lingering skulls, it's really good for Easter egg and camping. It's also the best bow for training. That might catch some people off guard, but the reality is, with 1 charge shot, you can kill a full horde of 24, plus a few zombies from those lingering skulls. That makes the void bow the only bow that can kill more than 24 zombies. That said, the void bow, if we look at every category, Easter egg runs, killing panzers, efficiency, training, camping, if we combine all of those to a flat rating, this is the best bow. Because of those skulls, it's super easy to kill steel without even trying. If you're playing this map co-op and you're running the void, if you don't have the most kills by the end of the game, you're definitely doing something wrong. Very underrated wonder weapon. The people who say it sucks are lying to you. Try it for yourself. Trust me. The fire bow is kind of a weird one. It traps half of a horde with these mini volcanoes that spit fire upwards and burn zombies to death. And the zombies that aren't trapped get knocked over when you shoot it. These volcanoes actually have splash damage, and when they break apart, they will kill any zombies that are near them. So the zombies that get knocked down also die. For killing hordes, the firebow feels like a much more consistent version of the wolf bow. When you get a horde together, it's just one shot and everything's dead. Unlike wolf, you don't need to worry about angles or anything like that. The radius on the charge shots is very generous. Another thing you can do too is lead or train running zombies into volcanoes if it misses. It will kill them when the volcano dissipates. Another strength of the firebow is the panzer damage. Just like the Void, this is a really solid bow for the Easter egg and the boss fight. And now, let's talk about the Ragnaroks. Since Treyarch decided to lazily reuse the gravity spikes for multiplayer, I'm going to keep this short. I know the bows are reused from the Sparrow in multiplayer, but that's nowhere near as blatant as they all have different effects. The only different ability with the Ragnaroks is being able to plant them down. But other than lifting up the Panzer, you'd never want to do this because there's a chance on higher rounds that it can bug out and make invisible zombies that are also invincible, which can obviously get you killed. This bug has existed since this map came out, and Treyarch never cared to fix it, sadly. They're not really that useful on this map anyways with how strong the bows are, but they had to have something be a specialist weapon, I guess. Other than the Annihilator, this is easily the most lame specialist weapon in the game. Alright, here's another hot take. This map's Easter egg is just okay. It's pretty basic, and there are some parts I really dislike, although it has some annoying quirks that we'll go over. Right off the bat, the first step annoys me. Why do you need to shoot the teleporter with an unupgraded bow? Why is it not an upgraded bow if that's what you need for the first step that it activates? Makes zero sense. Going into the Wisp step itself, I despise it. I find it ironic that people who hate the bird step on Blood of the Dead have no issue with this because they're basically the same step. There's way too many spawn locations, there's only one active at a time, and you're running around the entire map. It's boring and a terrible way to start the Easter egg. In co-op, I pray that some idiot doesn't end the round because I don't want to do this crap again. One of the worst parts of this step is that if you shoot a Wisp with the unupgraded bow, it immediately fails the step and you have to end the round. However, in addition to this, Treyarch thought it would be a great idea that if any explosive goes off near any of the Wisp locations while the step is active, it will fail the step and you have to end the round. This most commonly happens with Widow's Wine grenades, and trust me, it happens a lot. It makes sense to fail the step with the Wrath of the Ancients, but any explosive? If that's intentional on Treyarch's part, it's a horrible design choice. I don't want to do this step once, let alone twice during an Easter egg. Making me do it 3 or even 4 times because somebody's Widow's Wine is going off is brain dead. This is a lame step anyways. It would have been tolerable if all the Wisps were active at once, and the teleporter didn't reset if the round ended after you shoot them all. Making the Wisps appear one at a time, once again, feels like padding. After that, you need to get a safe code, play the easiest Simon Says in history, and bring the rocket down. Don't have much to say about this, it's fine. Although the rocket test going off when you're doing the second Simon Says is always irritating, but I guess putting the terminal down there was the only way they could spice up what otherwise is a pretty dull and easy step. Realistically, the only way you could fail this is if you have brain damage. Once you get the rod from the rocket and the slab from the second Simon Says, you need to activate the Keeper Spirit and collect souls with the upgraded bows at 4 different locations. So here's one of those quirks I was talking about. In another masterstroke from Treyarch, for whatever reason, if the match you're in is set to ranked, the number of upgraded bows you need to make for this step is according to how many players there are. That means in solo you only need to make 1 bow to do the step, 2 bows for 2 players, and etc, etc. But if you're playing either unranked or offline, you need to make all 4 bows regardless. Why they made it this way, I have absolutely no idea. It's another really dumb quality of this Easter egg that, in my opinion, they totally screwed up. You have no idea how many times I've done this Easter egg with a random or in a 3-player game, and the host unknowingly had it set to unranked, not realizing it messes up the Easter egg. So we get to that step and the bow that nobody's made shows up, and we either have to restart or somebody has to scramble to make that bow at round 15 plus. It's inexcusable. Outside of that though, this step is fine. There's a rare bug that if a panzer lands on the keeper as it's moving between zones, it will completely break the step and you'll have to restart the entire Easter egg. But admittedly, that almost never happens. You'd almost have to go out of your way to trigger that. Still though, it should have been fixed. I do remember people reporting it to Treyarch when the game was still receiving updates, but of course, it was never patched. Once the keeper is done, you're ready to start the boss fight. Each player that's in the game needs to plant their Ragnaroks on a square near the pyramid to start it. Small tangent here, but if someone misses the square or they've never played the map before and not know how the Ragnaroks work, waiting for everybody to refill their specialist back up after a failed plant is extremely annoying and wastes a ton of time. Anyway, once you've done that, you'll be in the boss fight proper. It's fine for the most part. It's a little primitive because it's one of the first boss fights in Zombies. You'll have phases where the giant keeper in the middle floats around and cycles through different attacks and spawns dogs every now and then. Once he goes to the middle, he'll charge up a one-hit kill attack that to counter you'll have to place your Ragnaroks in the middle of the room to open up his vulnerability phase. If you do enough damage during this, he'll spawn a horde of panzers that you'll need to kill, and once that's done, it's rinse and repeat until he's dead. Voidbow is by far the best for this boss fight because it does good damage to the panzers, and the skulls will kill every skeleton and dog that spawns during the fight. If you're just trying to beat the Easter egg solo, Void is the obvious choice. One cool detail that I appreciate is if nobody puts Ragnaroks down in time, you can actually avoid the one-hit kill attack by standing behind one of those pillars in the arena. This has saved quite a few of my runs with clueless teammates, assuming they don't instinctively dashboard. Another thing that's really helpful for this boss is the danger closest Gobblegum I mentioned earlier. It makes the panzers powerless at range and allows you to kite them around while picking them off from a distance. After the fight, you need to grab the summoning key and take it up to where you did the first Simon Says, and bam, Easter egg is done. Let's talk about the story now. Don't worry, it's not completely awful. Yet. Eisendrache's story starts us off with an animated cutscene, not an IGC. Presumably because the events of this cutscene would have taken a lot of effort to animate and make work in-game. In the cutscene itself, we see Primus chase down Dempsey 1.0 in one of the Origins robots they commandeered from the Giant. Dempsey 1.0 is in the hands of the Germans in this universe who are taking him to Eisendrache so they can load him into a rocket and send him to the moon base. Before the crew catches up to Dempsey, Primus crashes the robot in the village below the castle and needs to take the tram up to the castle. They were seemingly too late because during the first 5 seconds of the map, Dempsey is already loaded onto the rocket and on his way to the moon. Outside of the flashy intro, the main plot in this map is pretty straightforward. We get Dempsey back down to the castle and kill him. Everything that happens in between is mostly irrelevant to the larger narrative and is just there for exposition. And so you can have a main quest on the map with some twists and turns. There are some side plots behind the bows, the keepers, Richtofen and Groff in this map, but none of it is really important, or at least we don't see any of the implications of these side stories in the map itself outside of the bow quests. Despite not being relevant to the larger story, and especially to the player, I do enjoy the back and forth between Richtofen and Groff, even if its delivery is pretty heavy-handed and on the nose. It's the only time in Black Ops 3 where Primus is handled in a clever way, with Richtofen using his identity and knowledge to infiltrate the castle and fool Groff, even if it's just momentarily.
Eagle's Nest, this is Griffin Station. Come in.
This is Eagle's Nest, over?
Richtofen, is that you? When we didn't hear from you, we feared the worst. Richtofen, I'm observing your current actions. I must confess to being alarmed. Would you care to explain exactly what you are doing in the company of our enemies? Richtofen? Richtofen!
And right up until the end, Groff thinks Richtofen has just betrayed him while never catching on to what's actually happening. It's surprisingly good stuff. Another story positive is the ending cutscene. Dempsey killing himself does have some weight to it, and the acting here is strong. This is a praise I'm going to have for the other maps going forward as well, But as a side note, Black Ops 4 later would undercut the significance of these scenes by completely shifting the story away from this premise, and in Alpha Omega, Primus literally tells Ultimus Dempsey how he died and they play it off as a big joke, which is pretty funny and sad in retrospect.
I am happy to fight alongside you, Brother Dempsey. Yours is a good soul, and you died with honor.
Thanks, Tech. Much appreciated. Wait, what?
Blowing up the moon is another really cool sequence. This map has a few moon callbacks in it, and this caps it off pretty well. Even though you could take the cynical approach and say blowing up the moon is a giant middle finger to the old storyline, but we'll save those critiques for later. It's a good set piece, and coming off of the boss fight, it's an extremely triumphant and satisfying visual. One of the major criticisms I have for Eisendrache is that for all intents and purposes, it's very similar to Origins. A big difference with this map, however, is that with its smaller scale, the bow quests being much shorter and straightforward than the staffs, the map itself being much smaller with no mud, it makes you feel like you're doing more with less busy work in between. Which is why I can concede that this is a solid map at its core, and unlike Shadows of Evil, it actually has a reason to exist, even though it's far from my personal favorite. Shadows of Evil was a shameless imitation of Mob of the Dead with little to no improvements over its predecessor, and the love for that map is one I'll never understand. But Eisendrache is an okay interpretation of what Origins did with a few twists and problems of its own. The lack of creativity with DE and Shadows is something that even to this day never sat right with me. Because waiting for Black Ops 3 to come out, I played a ton of Mob of the Dead and Origins. So to see those maps reinterpreted and have their ideas repackaged as new maps in this game, on top of the story really beginning to lose me by this point, it made me lose a lot of faith in this game pretty early on. Until... Zetsubou No Shima is the map where Treyarch finally broke the mold. As someone who never stopped playing Black Ops 2 up until Black Ops 3's release, because the CODs in between BO2 and 3 were absolutely terrible, it was refreshing to finally have a map that felt completely new. I'd been playing Mob of the Dead and Origins the entire time, which is why I quickly saw through the facade Shadows of Evil and Eisendrache put up and got tired of those maps pretty quickly. This map is all ambition, and while it doesn't do everything perfectly, I have a ton of respect for it. Zetsubou No Shima signified that we were finally out of the safe and predictable era of maps in Black Ops 3, and it innovated in so many ways with the plant system, side quests, and quest design. Right from the beginning, Zetsubou's map layout is a massive improvement just in terms of the way the player branches out. Either door out of spawn leads to the two distinct sides of the map, each housing its very own power switch. Depending on if you're in a solo or a co-op game, where Quick Revive or Juggernog lands will help influence this. And because which side of the map it spawns on is random, it always has some variety in which way you open up. Each of the two sides of the map have areas with many important things, this being the box, traps, or Easter egg and quest related stuff. Both areas have circular designs with drop-downs so the player can maneuver these paths well and not get trapped by zombies either spawning or following you in these places. Then we come to the labs. Both Lab A and B have shield parts in their respective places, ensuring the player will travel to both of them to build the shield. Both labs also have their very own power switches that turn on the perk machines on their respective sides of the map. But Zetsubou handles its power mechanics far differently than any other map. While other maps have had multiple switches, no map has had the watering and bucket mechanics that this map has. This map has, in multiple locations, pools of irradiated element 115 water. This is used for multiple things, but one of the many uses is the power for the two lab locations. To use the water, the player must acquire Zetsubou's main unique item, the bucket. This is a one-time pickup item that each player in-game can acquire. and they are placed all over the map in different locations. Zetsubou does have a simple yet ingenious way that introduces this mechanic to the player without being intrusive. At the beginning of the game, in the spawn room, there sits a bucket the player can pick up. This bucket already has a bit of water in it, along with it being near one of the plant locations. Once a few zombies are killed, they will drop a seed, so the player learns very quickly through gameplay that the bucket is used to water things. And now that the player knows that, it encourages them to explore more of the map to find more water and things to water. Zetsubou does a very good job giving the player visual cues on how its mechanics work so they can learn through gameplay. And all of the unique mechanics added to this map only enhances the gameplay. Much like the map layout branches off into different directions, there are different types of irradiated water that can be collected. The watering and plant mechanics are the standout feature of Zetsubou, but it goes far deeper than just being an optional mechanic. The plant system ties into the gameplay, as well as the main Easter egg quest. It has a lot more depth than the simple tram fuses from DE, which are also dropped by zombies like the seeds. The different colored water can yield different types of plants, ranging from plants that provide power-ups, weapons, attract and attack zombies for you, hold crawlers, and can even provide a second chance afterlife system with the pods. These act as a clone snapshot of the player when activated, so if and when the player bleeds out, they immediately return with any and all of the weapons and perks they had when they imprinted on the plant. This single plant type manages to not only be more creative, but useful than any of the previous attempts at after-death perk mechanics in previous Treyarch games. And this is just an example of one single plant. This system is so intricate and gives Zetsubou gameplay depth that no other map has. As the player uses the pools of water to turn on the power at both laboratories simultaneously, this is where they now gain access to the bunker. Many maps have had bunkers that are sectioned off areas before and after, but Zetsubou's is one of the most significant as it isn't just a section of the map, but rather the second half of it. The bunker is where Zetsubou really expands, which is a bit ironic due to the fact that it's a more dark and close quarters environment. But the map layout and its progression really comes to a head once the bunker is accessed. Because here is the main power switch like older maps, and once it's activated, the entire map is turned on permanently. It's the next major step for the setup of this map. Not to mention the power switch itself, like the bucket, has its very own teaching tool. The power is needed to be turned on by clearing an underwater fan. By doing this, the player is locked in this underwater section where they need to learn how to swim as well as use the spore mechanics to their advantage. By breaking the spore on land, it causes the player to cough and be unable to use their weapon. But underwater, the player can use them to regain oxygen. This teaches the player to use the spores when they're low on air underwater. And as the deepest parts of the bunker are explored, we see this element pay off in a big way. At the very end of the map, through the bunker and to the lowest point, a long underwater cave leads down to an important part for the wonder weapon. Normally the player would down if they tried to stay underwater for this long, but thanks to the teaching tool of the spores, the player can now take advantage of this mechanic. As deep as the bunker goes, 3 elements keep it from feeling as cut off from the rest of the map as one would think. In both the first, second, and third section of the bunker, there exist fast travels that get back to the other parts of the map. One in the base, one on the outside by the power, and the final one by the flak gun. These are great and simple ways to get to and from the bunker, as the zipline and plumbing pipe are 2-way fast travels. Zetsubou may be a close quarters map for the most part, but all the elements benefit that playstyle, which is why it's difficult to separate the map layout from the gameplay because they flow so well together, as well as how the player progresses and uses the map mechanics. You see, all of these elements I've discussed are used to craft the wonder weapon, complete challenges, and do the Easter egg. The underwater spores are useful to help the player get the wonder weapon parts as well as upgrade it. The fast travels are used for both the wonder weapon upgrade and the main quest. The plant system gives not only ways of helping yourself out for steps, but some challenges revolve around them, which leads to the plant system being used more and more so the player learns it well. And not to mention that the wonder weapon itself, like all of the things on this map, interact in more ways than one. The KT-4 can help clear out spiderwebs, open new paths, and make plants stronger. This is what gives Zetsubou its depth, by having a wonder weapon that doesn't just simply kill zombies effectively, but really engages with the map well, and adds to all the mechanics on it. As you progress through the map, you learn it well. While Zetsubou might have one of the longer setups that exist, it's all worth it in the end for what the player ends up having. You have a wonder weapon that fits the layout, interacts with the environment, helps with mechanics, and provides the player with the protection they need for dealing with the bosses. Which, they certainly are interesting. There are the spiders, which are small, slow, low-damaging enemies that can cut off certain paths, and the thrashers. But if the player can deal with them properly before they aggro, they aren't nearly as time-consuming of an enemy like the Panzer or Margwa. And like I stated, the KT-4 can deal with the thrasher quite effectively, and instantly get rid of the web walls the spiders make. There also exists a unique buildable for this map, which gives protection from the spores, as well as the thrasher explosion, and lets you breathe underwater longer. The gas mask. Having something like this puts more emphasis on the player to learn the map's mechanics, so that way they can counteract them or make them easily navigatable. This is what makes Zetsubou so great. The barrier to entry may be higher than most maps, but because of that, once the players learn it, they are rewarded well. Like the challenge system, it may be up to the RNG gods which ones you get, but complete them and you get a part for the wonder weapon upgrade and the lightning shield, which is a temporary shield upgrade, but is the best shield upgrade that exists. Any zombie that hits it will instantly die. In addition, it's used for multiple Easter egg steps as well. Zetsubou has the content to back up its learning curve. If the challenges and side quests were both hard and the rewards unsatisfying, then it wouldn't be worth it. But the challenge is fair and very much worth it over the side quests in Shadows, for example. The perfect example of this is the secondary boss fight. You progress through the map to build the KT-4. Then you use the wonder weapon to open up the second boss fight, and once you beat it, you get a part for the wonder weapon upgrade and a pool of spider water which gives free Widow's Wine. Besides the great aesthetics of that, this is how you give the player a good challenge and make the reward worth their while. Many players don't even know that there's an insta-kill shield, but Zetsubou is one of those rare cases where the quantity and quality is there 100%. Every mechanic the player would have to deal with becomes easier when progressing further into the map. The spores giving you trouble? Craft the gas mask. Spiderwebs and thrashers are being difficult? Build the wonder weapon, which when killing a thrasher gives a helpful cloud that boosts the player's movement speed and reload speed. Every element complements each other on this map, and the specialist weapon is another great example of this. Once all the podiums are completed and the Skull of Nansapwe is earned, this map opens up so much more. Quite literally, as it too gives you access to the Easter egg locations, as well as some hidden goodies to help you out. Having all the aspects of the map interact with each other in satisfying and rewarding ways, while never being too easy, is what Zetsubou does so well. Zetsubou has one of the coolest side quests in all of Zombies. You'll need to have all of your challenges completed and have the Skull of Nansapwe. On a spider round, if you use the mesmerize ability of the skull, there will be one spider who's different from all the others. Your character will comment on this spider when you discover it. You'll have to then take him to the 3 different colored waters around the map. He'll then drink from each. Once that's done, you'll need to take the spider to Lab A, get him in the cage like you did for the KT-4, and once you raise him up, hit the console with your electric shield. Once you lower him into the pit, the round will end and the next will be normal. After that round though, it'll be a spider round again, except these spiders are slightly stronger. They still die in one hit to the skull and the KT-4 though. Once that's done, you need to go back to Lab A and raise the cage. You'll find a cocoon that the injector will stab into and give you the reward. I don't say this lightly. You can play as a spider. I'm not kidding. This is one of the greatest things ever put into a map. It has all the best qualities of a side Easter egg. It's well hidden, it's hard to do, it's rewarding, it's useful, it's weird, it's fun, and even though I don't do it every game, this map would not be the same without it. I love this thing. It's also really good for saving yourself when you're trapped. That's what a lot of high rounders use it for, because unfortunately the damage of the spider does start to fall off in the low 40s, but this is still an amazing addition to this map. The Zetsubou main Easter egg is the one part of the map that falls a little flat. I'm sure you'll have heard this joke before, but Zetsubou's main quest essentially boils down to repairing an elevator. Outside of the boss fight, it doesn't get much more exciting than that. There's also some really questionable and irritating parts of this Easter egg. While it does flow well with the map, that's mostly because there isn't a lot there. I mostly want to talk about the strange ways you acquire the cogs that are used to repair the elevator in question. To acquire the first of the 3 cogs for the boss fight, you must use a Gobblegum to get it. There is no other way to do so. Thankfully it's a classic, anywhere but here, but still, this is something that no one liked, as forcing the player to put on a specific Gobblegum sort of takes a bit away from the concept of what they're supposed to be used for. And it's telling that Treyarch wouldn't ever make it a requirement to have a Gobblegum be needed for a step going forward. The second cog is by far the most irritating. That's because it's completely random. I'm talking about the plain cog, of course. So, to get this one, you need to get an artillery shell from the upgraded version of the loot plants that come from using blue water and shooting them with the KT-4. You then load it into the artillery gun to shoot down a plane that flies around the map after you mesmerize a random piece of paper in the purple water room. The problem with this is, not only is it completely random whether you get the upgraded plant in the first place, it's also completely random whether those upgraded plants have the artillery shell in them at all. And trust me folks, the odds of getting the shell to spawn are not great. I don't know the exact number, but in my experience, it feels like a 1 in 3 chance. This is also where most speedrun attempts on this map die because of the bad RNG. This step should have been reworked to where the first upgraded loot plant gives you the artillery shell every single time. Because you have to completely stop what you're doing to make these plants, and it can take forever to finally get it. This is the one part of the Easter egg that I think genuinely sucks, aside from forcing everyone to do their challenges in a co-op game. Speaking of which, the third cog is acquired by shocking the zipline when someone is taking it in a co-op game, or by shocking it yourself in solo and pressing the melee button to drop down onto the pier. On the pier is the last cog. The other problem here is just simply making everyone do their challenges for the lightning to strike down. This isn't the most offensive thing in the world. It's not as bad as the plant RNG for the last cog, but this has just never sat right with me. People can get challenges in co-op that they physically are not good enough to complete, and it either means you restart until they get friendly challenges, or if you're far enough into an Easter egg, they just have to leave the game. I really wish it was just a percentage of challenges that needed to be completed in co-op, and in solo, you could have just kept it the same. Again, not the worst thing in the world, I just don't like it very much. The Easter egg is passable. I like how similar the setup process is to Mob of the Dead, and how if you're set up on the map, you may as well do the Easter egg, as upon completing it, you get access to the boss room and the free Perkaholic, which is a lot more useful on this map compared to DE because of the imprint plants. So, it's far from bad, but like a lot of the community, this Easter egg should have had a little more going on than, as I said at the top, repairing an elevator. The story on this map picks up a little bit, and spoiler, it's quite good. We're still not at the point of no return yet, but trust me, that's coming very soon. As each part of the map works to build off the next, the Easter egg as well as the story works in quite the same way. While the other maps in BO3 take more of a tell, don't show aspect of storytelling, where most of everything is just stated matter of fact right from the get-go, Zetsubou takes a much more subtle approach to its story as well as its atmosphere. This is the one map that isn't over the top in its soundtrack or in its design. It goes back to the more classic style of hidden or secret details around the map that tell a dark tale of what went on here, and hints on where things are going to lead. We are here for Takio 1.0, but unlike the other 3 maps, we aren't shown him in the cutscene or in any capacity until the end of the main quest. This works for 2 reasons. 1, It builds up a good aura of mystery and suspense about what situation we'll find Takeo in, and surprise in how he is revealed. We get an expansion on lore we knew very little about, all the way back in World at War with Division 9 on Shi no Numa. The cutscene is cited by many as the best in the game, and it works better than most others. Takeo was always the least liked character of the original crew, but unlike Dempsey, who was unaware of his fate, or Nikolai, who rejected it, Takeo accepts what must be done and seems to be the only one who really grasps the situation. The conversation younger Takeo has with himself really gives a good depth to his character. While the twist reveal that the state we find him in is the Emperor's doing, it comes off as a good reveal, rather than an unnecessary retcon of a character's backstory like Nikolai. The main map's Easter egg works well with its gameplay, and its subtle story fits well with the character that it's about. While the final bit of the Easter egg would set up for a thread that would lead down a controversial path in the next game, the map sets up the next very well. As Zetsubou was a more reserved journey, the next would be a lot louder and in your face. Gorod Krovi is good. Really good, actually. While not without flaws and bugs, as we'll discuss, this map does so many things right. This map has a very bombastic intro cutscene, which establishes that this one is going to be very different from the other four. This map relies on new and old elements of zombies and blends them together almost perfectly. Whereas Shadows and DE were very transparent and forced in their references and fan service, GK rides that line perfectly. The wonder weapon on this map, as a nice change of pace from the others, is surprisingly in the mystery box, making this a nice contrast from Zetsubou No Shima, where you basically had to do 80% of the Easter egg to obtain it and upgrade it. As a bonus, the PPSH, a fan favorite weapon from World at War, was brought back after 7 years. And on top of that, the mystery box in Gorod Krovi is loaded with fun DLC weapons, making the box on this map very worthwhile. The quest to open Pack-a-Punch, acquiring the specialist weapon, and the new equipment, all gameplay related and flow into each other seamlessly. With my only complaint being pretty much the same as everyone else's, by saying that the 15-second dragon cutscene is annoying. But the silver lining to that is that it gives you an opportunity to take a break. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's go through why Gorod is such a well-balanced map. While Zetsubou took a long time to set up for an immaculate payoff, Gorod has a more straightforward setup and easier to understand mechanics. Gorod is all about going from location to location multiple times, when calling down the Groff modules, which act as the 3-step system to unlocking Pack-a-Punch, in the same vein as Derice and Ascension. One issue I have is that there's only one door out of spawn, and you cannot fast travel from one side of the map to the other like on Zetsubou. You'll have to run all the way back, and the buildings that separate spawn from the supply depot and tank factory don't have paths that overlap, so you'll have to go all the way back through the department store by spawn. The only fast travel that leads to spawn is from Pack-a-Punch, so if you wanted to get back there, you would have to go all the way to Pack-a-Punch, meaning that you'd have to watch the 15-second dragon cutscene and go through the tube anyways. This can lead to the flow of the map feeling a bit sluggish at times, but all the areas for the most part are much more open than Zetsubou, so you won't find yourself being trapped as often. Like stated before, the map's mechanics and setup is much more streamlined than Zetsubou, but not to the point where it's too easy, and the Groff modules give a decent enough rush to defend. The zombie shield on this map is one of the best. With a massive fire blast attack, there's a lot of ways to protect yourself and do decent damage. Speaking of damage, the one thing Gorod does well is its roaming enemy that does an area of effect damage to you, the dragon. Dragons, being teased on the previous maps, are a real spectacle here, and they have real interaction with the player, both positive and negative. The dragon that swoops down to breathe fire in certain areas gives a constant threat for the player that can be avoided with a little bit of heads up and map awareness. In addition, the shield provides immunity to the dragon's fire, making it an even more important and effective tool that the player will want to focus on keeping and upgrading. With all the spectacle this map has, it still somehow manages to have a more traditional, classic map charm and playstyle. Perhaps it's the 3-pronged pack system, or maybe the ease of which you can acquire the wonder weapon from the mystery box, which hasn't been the case for an original map since Buried in Black Ops 2. Every original map since has needed a quest to get them. This makes the barrier to entry a lot easier than even Eisendrache. The Mark III doesn't have infinite damage, but it does give a slowing effect to the zombies, and the black hole kills into the 60s. That slowing is really strong for the entirety of the game, especially if you're using the shield strategy in the bunker. When people say that the Mark III sucks, they clearly neglect just how useful it is to hold on to, even when it stops killing. After getting all of the Groff modules and riding the dragon, which is a real treat and shows off the impressive budget BO3 clearly had, you arrive at Pack-a-Punch. The Pack-a-Punch building is very reminiscent of the smaller, more simpler maps from World at War, and even acts as a tiny survival map in its own right. As it's separated from the rest of the map, it gives a nice break from all the running around and dragon action. But you won't be saved from the special enemies here, which there are 2 new ones. The Manglers and Valkyries. Each being a very different type of enemy, but having similar ways of attacking the player. The Manglers being slower moving, armored enemies that shoot homing projectiles, and the Valkyries, which are airborne enemies that shoot constant beams at you, which can also shock zombies, making them explode when you kill them. I think the Manglers work well for the map, but the Valkyries are just too much of a mixed bag to say that they're good. No enemy that can fly should be as irritating as they are, move as fast as they do, or take as many hits to kill as they do. Plus, the fact that they can spawn an infinite amount of electric zombies if they park themselves outside of the player's view is a real annoyance, meaning you'll need to go out of your way to find the trail of zombies to find it and kill it. With the fact that they're a flying enemy with a significant hitbox, the player can and will get stuck on them if they fly and block a doorway. There's a plus side to the enemies though, and that's how the player kills them. If 6 Mangler arms and helmets are shot, or 6 Valkyrie cameras are destroyed and sets of arms are shot, 2 different masks which grant damage reduction from and increase to these enemies. This system is very simple yet beneficial in helping players to deal with these enemies a lot better. The Dragon Wings, which take up a mask slot, are another item that skips the cutscene and takes you straight to pack. They are a very welcome addition to this map. The challenges and additional content is varied enough to give each match enough depth and replayability to keep coming back. The new specialist weapon on this map is the Gauntlet of Siegfried. It has 2 abilities. There's the baby dragon on the gauntlet itself that can shoot fire like a flamethrower, or you can send the baby dragon off and do a massive glide punch with the gauntlet. The flamethrower is pretty lackluster, so you'll primarily want to punch with this thing, but unfortunately, that has a few problems. Some pretty big ones, in fact. Firstly, and by far the most annoying, punching into death machines. Why is this a thing? If you punch into one, it forces you to waste your entire specialist bar because for whatever reason, they thought that the baby dragon staying out and shooting things was something that people would actually want to do. It's awful. Secondly, and this is by far the most game-breaking, the gauntlet will crash your game at high rounds. It becomes very likely to happen after round 60 plus, so high round games just can't use it. How this wasn't fixed baffles the mind. I could have sworn people reported this issue when the map was out, but once again, Treyarch didn't seem to care. One last issue with the gauntlet that happens somewhat rarely is that when you punch into a Valkyrie, there's a small chance that regardless of how much health you have, you will instantly go down. So yeah, that's fun. Thanks, Treyarch. The Gorod Krovi Easter egg is the most difficult Easter egg in Black Ops 3. That's why, more often than not, you'll see bad players complain about it. I don't think it's perfect. In fact, right at the beginning, you'll have what I like to call an artificial roadblock step. To start this step, you need to kill a Valkyrie next to a generator at Pack-a-Punch, and then you need to scramble around the map and put in the right code into these dials to get a cylinder for Sophia. Now, the code you put in follows a certain formula that 99% of people playing this game don't understand, and I'm not going to pretend that I do either. I think we've all unfortunately been on Chronorium.com at least once just to be able to complete it, because the code required isn't communicated to the player in any meaningful way. This is the one part of this Easter egg that flat out sucks. There's no two ways about it. This whole step feels like it was put in to artificially inflate the duration of the Easter egg hunt back in 2016. Because of that one bad decision, the game suffers as a result. Now the overwhelming majority of people need to use an external source just to complete the first step. And that's, you guessed it, bad game design. I'm just going to skip ahead to doing the challenges because getting the trophies is really not that interesting. It's only worth mentioning that up to this point you need to have gotten the Dragon Strike and the Gauntlet to progress. Now, one of the most dynamic parts of this Easter egg is that the challenge order is random, with the exception of the last challenge. That's always the same. The first one I want to talk about is the most controversial, the bomb step. I don't want to say you're bad at zombies if you hate this step, but I'm tempted. So, the basic gist is that when the step comes up, on the map above the console you place the trophies on, each part will flash in a sequence, and they flash pretty quickly. There are 6 different bombs around the map, and what you need to do is go to each location in the sequence and deactivate the bomb in that area. If the timer runs out or you press the wrong bomb, the bombs will explode and instantly down anyone near them. In solo, this step is very easy to the point of being a non-issue, because you can just pause the game on each part of the sequence the map shows you. The timer you're given is also extremely generous, to the point where even if you got the worst bomb order, as in having to run back and forth through the map the most, you'll still be able to complete it with ease. Co-op, however, is a different story, and it's why a lot of people dislike this step. You can't pause while the board tells you the sequence, and as mentioned, the order flashes quite quickly, and depending on the player count, the timer can be very strict as well. With 2 players, you can usually still do the entire sequence by yourself, if you don't get the worst bomb order possible, so that's a positive. But 3 and 4 player lobbies aren't so lucky. You'll need to coordinate with your team and assign them to different bomb locations before you activate the next challenge. And usually, not knowing if you'll get a bomb step at all on the next go. When it starts, the person reading the order off needs to tell everyone else where to go. Another method I've seen is having 2 people at Dragon Command and one person remembers the first half of the sequence and the other remembers the second half. Then you both split up and do all the bombs on different sides of the map. But if all your teammates are bad, the latter option might not be viable. The person reading off the order in the first scenario has by far the most demanding job, because if they screw up, they'll kill the entire team more often than not. What I enjoy about this step is the stress and the adrenaline rush of doing it in a 3 or 4 player game. Doing the callouts and making sure everyone is ready is genuinely exciting and engaging. It's a step people fear, as they should. We need more steps in zombies that force you to work with your team in a high stakes way like this. That's why the buried Easter egg works so well, because it's filled with steps just like this, and it's designed with 4 people in mind in an intelligent way. Zombies moving away from steps like this and 4-player Easter eggs to a smaller extent in BO4 and beyond really limits Easter egg design. Basically, to wrap this up, I think the bomb step is great. I enjoy it. The Mangler Escort, on the other hand, is a very simple step. A green-eyed Mangler will spawn at the department store or the tank factory, and you need to bring him back to Dragon Command. If you don't find him in time, he runs away too far from you, or you kill him on accident, the step will fail. One small tip that most people already know is that if you shoot the Mangler's arm off, he starts running straight away. I've played with people who are too scared to do this, and it makes the step take way longer. Don't be that guy. The drop pod challenge is so nothing, I don't even know it's there. A drop pod will come down outside of one of the dragon landing pads, and you need to defend it from far away. And when it opens, you need to send your baby dragon to go grab it. You need to pick it up and bring it back to Sophia. This step feels like filler. I don't have anything to say about it. The Valkyrie Escort is the other escort in this Easter egg, but this one is a lot different. You need to run to spawn, and a green lighted Valkyrie with no arms will float down onto the map, and you need to very slowly escort him to Dragon Command, all while zombies infinitely spawn. Just like the Mangler, you can shoot and kill him, and if you do, you'll fail the step. This is another one that I see a lot of misconceptions about. People say that you need Undead Man walking to do this step. The reality is, in solo, if you have monkeys and the Dragon Strike, that usually lasts you long enough to do the whole thing. Additionally, in co-op, you could just have your teammate or teammates hoard zombies in the tank factory and supply depot while you do the entire escort with basically no zombies on you. Just like the bomb step, I don't get the hate for this one. I think people just aren't very good at the game, or to give them the benefit of the doubt, it's just that they don't know the right strategy to this one, without relying on a crutch Gobblegum to do the step for them. The Gersh challenge is another one where I don't have much to say. You go around the whole map, you shoot him, rinse and repeat. My only gripe is that he can only be damaged by a pack-a-punched weapon, which if you're doing this Easter egg on a low round and you get this challenge first, it can be pretty aggravating, but that's kind of a nitpick. It's a BO1 callback, it has some story we'll go over later. Moving on. The last challenge, which will always be the last challenge, is the Mangler Lockdown. For this, you'll need to grab a keycard and go to Pack-a-Punch. Have everyone hold X on this console on the floor, and this will activate a lockdown that's just like the one you had to do to get the Dragon Strike, except this time it's only Manglers. While this is happening, the keycard is extracting data from the console. You can easily cheese this step by leaving one Mangler alive in the first wave, and waiting for the bar at the bottom of your screen to fill. If you do this step normally, it's pretty cool, but unfortunately, the cheese exists. So that's all anybody does. After that, you take the keycard back to Sophia, and that's it. Sophia will then give you the power cord to repair Nikolai's mech that was thrown into a building and damaged in the intro cutscene by the dragon. After you give Nikolai the power core, you'll be ready to start the boss fights. The first one is with the dragon, and it's really straightforward. You run around in circles and wait for Nikolai to open his weak points. It's pretty easy, although if your shield breaks during this fight or somehow you forget to go in with one, the fight becomes hard mode, and it's pretty easy to go down. The second fight with Nikolai is a lot more interesting. Similar to the dragon, he also has pretty obvious glowing weak points, but they're a lot harder to hit because he moves around a lot. He has quite a few attacks. He has the minigun, he shoots these exploding harpoons at you, and he spawns raps from the multiplayer which chase you around the arena. He's a pretty good boss fight. I think he's a little too weak to the Mark III. I mean, you can basically insta-kill him with it, and the health of the cores doesn't seem to scale very much into co-op. So if you know what you're doing with the Mark III, this fight can be over faster than it took to sit through the cutscene after you kill the dragon. It's a nice touch that if you do this Easter egg in solo or under an hour and 15 minutes in a co-op game, you'll get a permanent perkaholic, just like Moon and Shangri-La in Black Ops 1. This is a pretty tough map to high round, so it's borderline essential if you want to do well on this map. It also allows you to get unlimited quick revives in solo. Let's talk about the story now. When Nikolai dies and the cutscene ends, you're teleported back to spawn, and 3 of the 4 characters are treated to some of the worst dialogue ever written and recorded by a character that has only been alluded to up to this point, that being Dr. Monty. I have a lot to say about him later, but basically this is where BO3's story turns into an embarrassing mess. Let me be clear, it was subpar and confusing up to this point, but now there's no going back. This is where it gets completely derailed, and it's unsalvageable from this character's introduction onward. We're going to talk about that in the next map, but no, this is where figuratively the story goes from eating a cheap TV dinner to drinking raw sewage. The story itself in this map, excluding Monty, while having a decent enough impactful moments, in area falls back to the tired ideals of modern writing, where instead of something ultimately new, it's just talking about what came before in the past and killing it, which is an unfortunate motif of this entire game's story, but it feels most apparent here, as you kill Gersh from Ascension for seemingly no reason other than to destroy another part of Zombie's past. A story revision I dislike comes in the ending cutscene where it's revealed that Ultimus Nikolai's quips in BO1 and World at War about having multiple wives was just him coping with the fact that he lost his real wife, presumably in World War II, although it's not very clear. This was clearly only done to have some kind of emotional impact because as a character, Nikolai is very funny and charismatic, while his Primus counterpart is an absolute depressing stick in the mud. This is also apparently why he's an alcoholic. This retcon comes off as really corny to me. 1.0 Dempsey didn't speak at all, so that was a bit of a cop-out, but Takio 1.0's death and his backstory in that map was handled really well. This cutscene tries to do something similar, but it falls flat. Nikolai 1.0 is just way too goofy of a character for this to land, even with the retcon. Overall, while the ending itself isn't necessarily something that has the impact it should, what it does do well is set up the right level of hype for the final map. To end this map off, Gorod has the gameplay of the better maps from Black Ops 1, with the level of content from the Blundell maps of Black Ops 2, but without resorting to lifting any ideas directly from those maps, which is the reason why it works so well for so many types of players. It's a jack-of-all-trades type of map, and with so many tiny details that it gives more than your average map, such as having time trials for getting melee weapons, the before-mentioned masks, or even the useful feature to teleport back into the boss fight arena with Anywhere But Here, which is another great, albeit unintended reward for completing the Easter egg. Gorod Krovi is a shockingly good map that also pushes zombies forward, this time in a simple, less quest-heavy experience, and is a beautiful contrast to Zetsubou No Shima. Gorod and Zetsubou, in terms of Blundell's design philosophy, are almost polar opposites, which is why I think it's the best two maps we've ever had back-to-back. Because after Zetsubou, Gorod was an extremely refreshing change of pace. But unfortunately, this is where Treyarch's winning streak would come to an end. Revelations is the zombies equivalent of a bad clip show that goes completely overboard and doubles down on the self-indulgence and nostalgia. This all culminates in quite possibly the most mediocre zombies map of all time, while also being extremely disappointing and rife with wasted potential. A common misconception with Revelations is that it was a completely safe choice to bring all these maps back and piece them together in the way that they did, and that the return of the Apothicons had been foreshadowed when the Shadow Man was trapped in the Summoning Key, and through various ciphers and radios, so we all on some level knew that this was coming beforehand, making it predictable. However, in a lot of ways, that couldn't be further from the truth. Revelations is a pretty ambitious map. The issue is that most of it just doesn't work. First off, big criticism I have is the maps that were chosen and the sections of those maps that were recreated. I know they aren't meant to be one-to-one ports, but why the heck is the Flogger in Origins? And of all the sections from that map, why Generator 3? And having a section of a map from Black Ops 3 in this map is peak laziness, especially when you consider all the maps that got snubbed just so Eisendrache could be here for seemingly no other reason than the 0G gimmick. The map being the way it is was simply done for no other reason than for zombie YouTubers to play the map for the first time and give overly nostalgic reactions. But the problem is that all of these returning locations, the wow factor fades quickly, because the map mechanics don't properly benefit these layouts. And having the big finale map being nothing but reused assets made the map feel played out very quickly. The issue with discussing the map itself and why this section is going to be so short is there's really not much to say. Almost every part of this map, except for spawn, pack, and the boss fight room, are reused areas. So the feeling of playing the map doesn't feel as unique as the story wants you to feel, and the other issue is that despite all of these older maps returning, none of the depth of them are brought with them. This map has such a basic design and feeling to it, with none of the dynamic elements of Zetsubou or Gorod. For the last map in the game to have such a bland and basic gameplay loop, even when compared to Shadows of Evil, is just disappointing. Rev just takes everything and throws it all together with no sense of how they'll blend. And the Wonder Weapons are a perfect example of that. Even the bows weren't as broken as one might assume, because they couldn't melt the bosses on the maps they were on. But when you introduce the Thunder Gun into that equation, along with allowing the player to hold both the Servant and the Thunder Gun, it leads to the difficulty being a complete joke as well. Not to mention the Ragnaroks, the returning Dragon Shield, and Little Arnie's on top of that. Many maps get criticisms for being too easy, which leads to them being boring to some players. Buried for a long time had that reputation, but the big difference between Buried and Revelations is that Buried was its own original map that had its own mechanics that you couldn't get by playing any other map. Revelations has nothing about it that stands out, aside from it being really easy. Now, I'm making it sound like Revelations is an awful map, which isn't the case. It's not. But what else it isn't is a great map. With none of the innovation of Zetsubou, the fun of Gorod, or even the style of Shadows. Revelations has very little in terms of gameplay depth. The only thing that offsets this are all the mask side offerings. The mask system, which had been slowly iterated in each map, has been expanded tenfold here. They all have their own enemies that are needed to be killed or tasks to be done to acquire them. And there's a very decent amount that gives all kinds of bonuses. This system is the only thing Revelations has going for it. But even then, in some ways, they take it too far. Because some of the masks are, by and large, better than others, and make them completely obsolete. The only other notable side quests are the returning spawn room fast time challenges that give plenty of decent melee weapons. And the weapon table at Noct, which is the first time since Moon that players could share their weapons with another player. But here, it's done a lot more easily than the hacker with the random box weapons every other hit. Here, you can choose which weapons of your own that you want your friends to have. The Revelations Easter egg is by far and away the worst main Easter egg in BO3. It makes no sense, it's not fun to do, the story is horrible, it's not good at all. If you've never done or know about the steps for this Easter egg, this is going to sound unbelievable, but trust me, these are all real steps. All of which stumped Easter egg hunters and the entire community for days on end. And that's because they're poorly designed, deliberately obtuse, annoying from a gameplay standpoint, and have absolutely no wow factor whatsoever. To this day, it remains by far the longest main Easter egg hunt, clocking in at 9 days. Let's see why that is. First step you need to do is shoot these random tombstones outside of the map that you can't read without a sniper scope in spawn. These are the graves of our 4 characters for some reason. You need to shoot them in the order of the maps that they died in, which is kinda clever, I'll admit, but it makes no sense, seemingly, and does nothing and serves no purpose to the story. Off to a great start. After shooting the tombstones for no reason, you then need to find an ultra-specific, pointy rock that has now spawned inside of one of the jump pad spots at 3 different locations. And better yet, you can only see these rocks decently well if the jump pad is inactive. Once you find this pointy rock that looks barely different to any other rock, you must then get a keeper protector to go near this rock. He will then start doing this dumb-looking rain dance type thing, where you then need to defend him for what feels like an eternity. After that, he'll disappear and then drop a film reel which you then need to put in the radio in Noct. For some reason? This step is absolutely no fun because by this point you probably have the Apothicon Servant because it's required for a later step, and there's zero reason to even start this Easter egg until you're set up, so nearly every time you do this step it feels like boring filler that poses no challenge whatsoever. The next step is easily the second worst step of this entire Easter egg. You need to get little Arnie's out of the box. You then need to go into the Apothicon and very, very, very carefully throw the Arnie's into these holes the zombies spawn out of, again, for no reason. There are a total of 9 spawn holes inside of here, and you need to do them in increments of 3. After 3 holes, 3 Margwas will spawn. While killing them, you need to hope and pray that one of them drops a max ammo, so you can continue to do this step on the same round. Because they thought it would be a great idea to not refill your Arnie's automatically during this step. Thank you, Treyarch. After that's done, you'll need to find a film reel on the 2nd floor of the Apothicon. You then need to take this one to the radio on Kino for no reason. Doing this step mid-round is almost impossible because at any moment a zombie could spawn out of the holes, completely blocking the Arnie and wasting it. This step also sucks because, as alluded to earlier, the hitbox on the holes is extremely tiny, and trying to get them is insanely frustrating. It's not as bad in co-op because multiple players can get Arnies, but in solo this step is complete trash. The only, and I mean the only, positive of this step is that because you need to kill 9 Morgwas, it does give you a lot of points. That's about it. The next step is infamous. It's diabolical, despicable, offensive, boring, tedious, embarrassing, and sickening. This is the step that made this Easter egg take 9 days of non-stop searching to solve. This is the bone step. For the uninitiated out there, you may be wondering, why is it so bad? Well, for this step, you need to shoot pebbles that look almost identical to every other pebble. Some are in the map, but most are outside of the map. Once you shoot one of these pebbles, a tiny bone that's only slightly bigger than the pebble you shot will float above where the pebble was. After that, you need to shoot around the bone with the upgraded Apothecon Servant to suck it up. There are 6 pebble locations, and I want to talk about each one individually, so we can see just why this step is a giant piece of garbage. We're going to go in order from least offensive to most offensive. The least offensive and the only location I'd say is fine is the one in Shangri-La. It's just above Stamina Up. Nothing too bad about that one. It's technically in the map and you can spot it okay. This is how all the locations should have been, but unfortunately, Treyarch couldn't help themselves. The second bone is a little worse than Shang, no doubt about it, but not as bad as the rest. I'm talking about the one on the roof of Noct. This one you can barely spot, but it's not as bad as the others because, like the Stamina bone, this one is also technically in the map. With the third bone, now this is where it becomes just flat out evil. I'm talking about the one at Origins. This is the first one that's out of the map completely, and you need to blind fire at all these rocks that look the same. This one is third because of all the ones that are out of the map, this is the closest to the map itself. Simple logic, right? It's still horrible though. Fourth is going to be the Verrucht Bone. I was really tempted to put this higher, but it was going against the other 2 titans of stupidity. This bone is outside of the map on one of the rocks on the left side of this river. This one is horrible because there are rocks everywhere, and because of the poor lighting in this area and the render distance, it's extremely hard to see it even if you've shot it. That's why it's so high in this mini ranking. It's terrible. The fifth bone, and I was struggling over whether to make this the worst. It came down to the wire. It has got to be the spawn room bone. This one, you just can't see at all. You basically need a blind fire into this church to try and hit it. The only indication you have is the sound effect for hitting it, and if you missed that or didn't hear it, you just need to guess. This one is horrible in every conceivable way. Despite that, however,
there can be only one.
Surprising no one of the worst locations for anything in all of zombies, it has to go to the DE wall run bone. This one is horrific and truly putrid. It's the ultimate middle finger to the community. This location alone was why the Easter egg hunt took 9 days. People could not find this last bone. For this one, you need to wait for zero gravity and then spray all over this wall in the hopes of accidentally hitting the right spot for the bone to pop out. There's absolutely zero indication on this wall as to where you're supposed to shoot, by the way. Even when you've done this Easter egg a lot, this is the one bone that's a guessing game every single time. It could take 2, 3, sometimes even 4 G strike cycles to get this stupid thing. For that alone, it had to be the worst. Once you've painstakingly got all the bones, it's time to go back to Noct. On the second floor, you'll see that they're all laid out on the ground. You need to shoot another servant shot at these bones. It will then spawn a generic looking zombie corpse. Shoot it with the servant again, and you'll get the last film reel. Finally, you need to take this to the radio on Origins for, again, no reason. The next step is surprisingly simple. A spectral version of Sophia will appear in Noct near where the zombie corpse was. You need to go to all 4 corruption turrets and bounce the turret beams off of these crystals, which will then point the beams towards Sophia. Once that's done, you go back to Noct, hold X or square on Sophia, and she'll pop into existence, and then lead you to the teleporter in Kino. She'll power it up, and you can go into Samantha's room. The Chronorium will be laying here on the bed, you need to grab it, and that's it. After that we have the eggs, which aside from having too many locations is a pretty okay step. Once you come back from Samantha's room, you'll be back in Kino. You need to place the Chronorium on this podium, and this will start the egg step. Basically, you need to find 4 eggs, take them into the Apothecon, put each of them in one of these disgusting looking holders, get kills, worm pops out, grab worm. Now here's the interesting part. You need to take the worm back to where you got the egg and listen for these weird sonar beeps. Once you get close enough, you need to hold X or square on that location, and the worm will pop out and give you a symbol. Repeat that 3 more times, and the step is done. All those symbols we picked up we need for the first, and I'm going to say this in massive air quotes, boss fight. Stand in the circle in the projector room and you'll be awkwardly teleported into the boss room. Fun fact, there's a bug Treyarch never patched where there's a small chance that when you're teleported into the boss room, you can hit a death barrier and die. First thing you need to do in here is run up to the Chronorium that's now here for some reason and hold X or square on it, and the 4 symbols you picked up will appear in the book in a sequence. You then need to input these symbols up to where you spawn in the room. Then the boss fight starts. This once again poses no challenge because you have the Apothecon Servant and little Arnie's by this point. I don't want to go over all these phases because other than making the room look pretty, they're kinda lame to be honest. The only interesting one is the floor is lava, where you get to boost jump around, but that's about it. You just need to kill 1 or 2 Margwas to end each phase. Once that nonsense is out of the way, the summoning key will float down and you can pick it up. After this, you'll be teleported back to Kino, and now you get to do the glitchiest step probably ever. You need to take the summoning key, which is just a shameless reskin of the uplink ball from multiplayer, which is why it doesn't even look like the summoning key. The proportions are completely off. Anyway, you need to take the key and throw it at a bunch of different landmarks from each of the maps. As if the fake nostalgia hadn't been crammed down your throat enough at this point. But my favorite part of this step is the way the key can just disappear at random, gets stuck when you go through teleporters. Oh, and kills with the key don't actually count towards the rounds or give you any points. So that's just great. Wouldn't want to get this far into the Easter egg and have it be rewarding or anything. After collecting all this junk, you can start the final boss fight by going back into the Kino teleporter. This boss is a lazy copy-paste of the Shadow Man fight from Shadows of Evil, meaning that just like Shadows of Evil, you can end the fight in 2 seconds. This one is somehow even less exciting because instead of having to interact with the 4 keepers when you fail, you just need to get souls for the summoning key and throw it at Ghost Sophia, who's back for some reason, and she'll shoot a beam to break his shield. This is so lazy and awful, it makes the Takio boss fight on Zetsubou look like a masterpiece. This boss alone is a big part of the reason why people to this day think this map was a massive disappointment. And I can't say they're wrong when it sucks this hard. Apparently, that stone Apothecon in the background was supposed to be the boss, but it was cut because they ran out of time. Thematically, I don't know what the difference would have been and why killing this one big slug would have mattered when we see like 20 of them in the final cutscene, but it still would have been better than what we got. After the boss is done, we're treated to a terrible IGC with Maxis and Sophia that looks like it was made by a custom mapper for $5 and they only had an hour to put it together. It honestly looks like a Cold War cutscene, that's how bad it is. We then get the final cutscene, which is a pre-rendered video file, thank God. Only thing even worth noting about this cutscene, because most of it is poorly written slop, is that it ends with a title card that literally says, "The end." And you know what I think? They fully intended for this to be the end of the storyline. Which was the right call because it was so awful by this point that it absolutely needed to be put out of its misery. But unfortunately, they couldn't help themselves. More on that later. The thing you'll be immediately hit with when this cutscene ends is, oh, it ends the game. That's right. This map started a horrible trend of Easter eggs ending the game for no reason when you finish them. I don't care about your horrible story or continuity. Please let me keep playing the game. Thanks. Apparently BO6 is fixing this? God, I hope so. What a brain-dead decision. And you know, for a map called Revelations, there really aren't many. This story is notorious for being such a letdown and disappointment that players refuse to accept the fact that this was the end. Maybe Blundell really thought that this would have been the ending, but after its release and the reception to it, there's no doubt why Black Ops 4 brought back the Ether storyline. Because nothing is told to us. Nothing is revealed. We know almost nothing more than we did from the opening cutscene. The Shadow Man is bad, he wants to bring the Apothicons to take over the universe, and in the end, we banish all the evil. Despite this being a perfect world and a happy ending for the kids, because of how lackluster it was handled, no one was happy with it, and eventually we'd get an even worse ending in Black Ops 4, but that's a story for another day. Had the game given you the option to side with Monty or the Shadow Man, it would have been far more acceptable if one ending was the one we got, because even if it did get a bad reception, Treyarch could have just made whichever ending got less negativity the canon one, and continued from there. But like every aspect of Revelations, it was cut back and half-baked. This map was such a disappointment. Even the first trailer had a lot of people nervous, but I was still hopeful that this final map would wrap up the storyline in a satisfying way. It failed to deliver in story and gameplay like Moon and Origins, and compared to those maps, it hardly felt like a conclusion because of the last-minute pivot they had to do because of Black Ops 4. First thing we'll touch on here is characters, because I've been dying to talk about how much Primus sucks in this game. Primus throughout the game are just insufferable and cringe. People insult Ultimates for being one-dimensional, but throughout Black Ops 1, they developed, and their chemistry shined through as the maps went on.
I think Nikolai and Takeo are gonna get into it one of these days. And how often can Takeo get away with calling him Nicky?
With Primus, I see characters that are truly one-dimensional. Even the lines that they directly take from the Ultimates crew have purposely worse delivery or are slightly rewritten to be unfunny and painful to listen to if you played Black Ops 1 and World at War.
Hoorah! Don't fuck with a Marine! Hoorah! Don't mess with a Marine!
Take Dempsey for example. In Origins, the field reports he did were kinda interesting and added to his character, and at least made partial sense on that map.
Field report. Confirming arrival at site identified in our intel. No sign of the target, nor the other agents believed to be on intercept course. Dempsey out.
But fast forward all the way to Revelations in the middle of a war between two mystical forces, and God with a giant blue Apothicon sun over his head in a completely different dimension, and he's still doing them for literally no reason other than to make the audience feel sad for him, and give pointless exposition. That's bad writing, plain and simple. Let's also mention the non-stop cringe Primus Dempsey bombards you with. Seriously, his dialogue is like it was written for a children's cartoon.
It's gobble gobble gum time.
And there's zero agency in any of his gameplay dialogue.
No ammo. Well, this stinks.
Now, the counterpoint to all of this will inevitably be, well, most other zombie crews aren't super serious all the time. And that's true, but also the zombie storyline as a whole wasn't taken anywhere near as seriously in those past games as the Primus crew's journey is in Black Ops 3. This disconnect between the characters spewing this, and let's call it for what it really is, awful, childish, and pandering dialogue completely takes me out of the story.
What about this Dr. Monty guy? Who the fuck is he? Where the fuck is he?
Dr. Monty is on our side. That I am sure of. He's got to be around here somewhere.
You can never wash away the blood on your hands, Richtofen. You are an evil that must be stopped.
figure out a way to get me back down. I ain't keen on the idea of floating around space forever.
I have been here before. I know what we must do. We must return the rocket to the Earth by whatever means necessary.
If you want this writing to be taken seriously and not be in the background like it used to be, then I'm going to judge it and scrutinize it with different standards than I used to. The character conversations and dialogue are now at the forefront of the game. They're rammed down your throat, and the character writing on display here is abysmal in the context of the story they're trying to tell. The core issue with these characters is that I constantly say to myself, Richthofen, Dempsey, Nikolai, or Takio would never say that. The problem with zombies in general, especially these days, is whether it's the storyline, the maps, or even the gameplay, the series needs to be rooted in some kind of nostalgia, and that's why zombies can't ever evolve properly. Premise is the perfect microcosm for this, because the only reason they're loosely based off of Ultimus is because of nostalgia. If these were new characters with different voice actors presented in the exact same way, going on the same journey of killing versions of themselves in the exact same maps, people would say that they're wooden, awkward, boring, and cringe. How do I know this? Because that's exactly what happened to the Chaos Crew in Black Ops 4. It all comes down to the writing, and the zombies community is obsessed with presentation over substance. Unfortunately, now we're in an era of zombies where we have neither, but I digress. If you know anything about the gaming industry over the last 10 years with remaster after remaster and sequel after sequel instead of new IPs, it's because nostalgia sells, and anything new is a risk. And trust me, the irony isn't lost on me making this analogy about COD, a franchise that is more stale and decrepit than Star Wars at this point. But that was the beauty of zombies. It always felt separate to the COD franchise. Like, this is where all the devs' creativity and passion went. That's part of why big chunks of Black Ops 3 zombies are heartbreaking, because it's landing in the same pitfalls as the rest of the COD franchise. That being safe, lazy, nostalgia baiting, lack of creativity, just plodding along. The way the storyline progresses, as I mentioned in my overview earlier, is it's predictable. And it's predictable because last minute Treyarch decided, because of Black Ops 4, around the time of Zetsubou No Shima, Black Ops 3's story would portray our characters completing the cycle. Because of that decision, the storyline in both games suffer massively. I'm not going to try and say that Black Ops 3's story, plot, and writing sucks because it isn't like classic zombies. I think Black Ops 3's story just sucks on its own merits, while also not being like classic zombies and pissing all over the old storyline. It's not subtle at all what they're doing in that respect either. Killing the Ultimus crew, blowing up the moon, introducing God to explain all the mysteries of the old storyline in the least satisfying and embarrassing way possible. This may sound like a contradiction, but Monty, and to a lesser extent, the Apothicons, totally derail the story. Monty as an omnipotent god is a massive cop-out from the writers. It's to whisk away all the inconsistencies in zombies and give context to things that didn't need context.
Where do you think all these magic weapon boxes come from? The chalk drawings on the wall, the magic ammo drops? Do I need to go on, or do you get the message?
Because when you write yourself into a corner, you could just pull out the God did everything and turn your story into a multiverse card. And with the Apothicons, concoct a random, unprecedented threat out of nowhere to vaguely tie in with what Samantha says on Moon in Black Ops 1.
The blackness will swallow your pride! Something far more terrible than you lies here!
None of it's compelling. It's written horribly, and it doesn't work outside of the superficial nostalgia that Premise offers. Even by the end of Black Ops 4, we never know what the Apothicons or Keepers want, or why both sides are bad, or why they're even fighting each other. We have zero stakes and zero investment outside of, once again, our characters, and the only part of them we care about is that they're based on the Ultimus crew. Lastly, I cannot stress how bad Malcolm McDowell's performance is in this game. It's almost like the people at Treyarch were fanboying so hard that he was in the booth, and were so nervous that they never asked him to do another take, or gave him any kind of direction.
I do see stuff now and then that makes me go, ooh, that's not good. I have been watching. I have seen each and every one of your misdeeds. I know who you are. Sounds ominous, doesn't it? Good, because it fucking is.
Without exaggeration, I can honestly say he has the worst dialogue I have ever heard in a AAA video game. It's embarrassing.
Hello? Testing. Do you hear me? Testing. Actually, I don't know why I'm doing all this. I've got the bloody Shadow Man and the Apothecocky Cons throwing an intergalactic spanner in the works. When a duck swims on the water, you only see it glide, apparently effortlessly across the lake. But underneath, as in beneath the surface, it's a whole different story. Its legs are moving like he's pedaling a fucking bicycle up a mountain. Well, that's me right now. I am that duck.
It's the perfect culmination of bad writing combined with the worst delivery you've ever heard. As much as I dislike the Shadow Man 2 and his place in the story, at least his performance is believable and partially intimidating. But with Monty, similar to Primus, he's trying to balance serious and lighthearted, and it just falls flat on its face. So many parts of the dialogue in general feel like they were written for children, and I don't blame the voice actors for that because Treyarch gave them nothing to work with outside of the ending cutscenes. It's just flat out bad. Black Ops 4, on the other hand, as a continuation to Black Ops 3, just introduced a hell of a lot more questions. There were vague mentions of a Great War map that would somehow wrap up the story, but wasn't the whole point in Revelations that our characters do fight in the Great War anyways? It doesn't really make sense, which is why I think that ending would have been just as poor as the one we got. My point with bringing up Black Ops 4 is that Black Ops 3's storytelling and world building was so terrible that Black Ops 4 really had nowhere to go, and it shows. They literally had a title card that said, "The End," and given how badly they screwed everything up in that game, that's where they should have left it.
He's already dead!
Right when those long-standing questions about the storyline started getting answered, and Ultimus was brought in to add a little bit of charisma into Black Ops 4, they pulled the plug on the Aether storyline. All while leaving the way less successful Chaos storyline with a big cliffhanger. But in a massive plot twist surprising no one, Chaos was cancelled because Black Ops 4 Zombies as a whole flopped. For the next game, Treyarch had to go back to the drawing board after spontaneously being tasked with cobbling a game together out of Sledgehammer and Raven's failed 2020 project, with only a year to make it. So is it any wonder why Cold War feels completely soulless and story light outside of some terrible intel that no one's ever going to listen to? Except for a few cretins on Twitter who are the only ones who like this garbage, of course. But they don't matter, they may as well be bots. Treyarch have been creatively bankrupt with this story for years now, and it all stemmed back to Black Ops 3. It became such a mess that the only solution was to kill everyone and reboot it. That's how you know you failed as a writer and completely and utterly ruined your own source material. Alright, I've put it off long enough. Let's talk about Black Ops 3's mechanics. And let's start with what is the most defining and most jarring design choice in this game. Despite what people who have barely played this game or only play with Widow's Wine will try to tell you, as I briefly touched on in the Giants section of this video, in Black Ops 3, the speed at which zombies hit you is borderline broken. It feels like you can instantly go down. Without exaggeration, it breaks the flow of gameplay to make the zombies be able to down you this fast. And instead of addressing that, they just put in a broken crutch perk, Widow's Wine, to counteract it. Out of every other zombies game, it makes BO3 by far the hardest game to go back to and actually enjoy. It does feel like in BO3 that some downs are cheap because you just know that in any other zombies game, in that exact same situation, you wouldn't have gone down. Also, because of the spawn rates and awful sound design, you can just get pinned by 2 zombies out of nowhere without being able to hear them, and they'll insta-down you. Now, specifically for those who aren't aware or are going to try to deny any of the things that I just said, I have irrefutable proof that the zombie hit speed is significantly faster in Black Ops 3. You want to see the comparison? Well, here it is. Now isn't that something, huh? Just 1 zombie can down you in a little over 2 seconds. God forbid you look down at your phone and get distracted during a match, and if 2 zombies start hitting you, like I said, you get melted like it's nothing. Treyarch didn't do this by accident or broke the game somehow. This is an intentional design decision to make the game more difficult, because of all the new powers given to the player in Black Ops 3 compared to Black Ops 2, 1, and World at War. The shield is on every main map minus the giant. Widow's Wine as a perk seemed to have been made specifically to address this issue, and is without a doubt one of, if not the most broken perk in Zombies history. And lastly, the Gobblegums. More on those in a bit. The problem with this method is, there are other ways of making the game difficult. And in terms of balance, Black Ops 3 can skew so hard in the other direction of being overpowered, with Widow's Wine, the Shield, and Gobblegums, that this change only really ends up hurting people who are trying to play Black Ops 3 like it's classic Zombies. It's absolutely insane to me how many people glossed over this problem with the game, and I still rarely see it ever mentioned. And when it is, people talk it down with idiotic conjecture that somehow the zombies in Black Ops 3 are exactly the same as they were in Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 1. This issue makes Black Ops 3 just such a bizarre anomaly in the franchise. It's the only game where zombies are like this, and because of that, you need to really be in tune with Black Ops 3 specifically to be able to manage it. It's not that it's impossible to play around, or that it makes the game too difficult, it's that the game feels frustrating and way too random with this hit speed in place. In conclusion, the hit speed, while it isn't a deal breaker for me, it was for many. A lot of people I knew quit Black Ops 3 early because of this. This is going to be extremely long, and I didn't cut anything out because Gobblegums, especially nowadays, are extremely polarizing. And I want to give my full perspective, which is one you don't hear very often from other content creators. And with them returning in Black Ops 6 Zombies, all of this is very relevant. Gobblegums were introduced into Black Ops 3 as a way of monetizing zombies, as well as adding more gameplay variety that, unlike old Zombies, wasn't just bound to a new feature in an individual map, but instead the entire game. The effects of Gobblegums were separated by 4 colors. Green Gobblegums would start a set timer upon picking them up, and you had its effect until it ran out. Blue Gobblegums gave you an effect for a certain number of rounds. Orange Gobblegums activate their effects upon doing a certain action, or some just activate immediately upon picking them up. And lastly, everyone's favorite, Purple Gobblegums are stored and manually activated by the player by hitting up on your D-pad. Gobblegums are required for machines scattered around each map, but a Gobblegum machine is always in the spawn room on every map except for Shadows and the Giant. When Black Ops 3 launched, there would only be 2 active Gobblegum machines, not 1, on the map, and similar to the mystery box, they would move to another location after a few hits. Another change that was made further down the line was that the first Gobblegum used to cost 500 points. However, in 2017, this was changed in a hotfix, not a patch, to make the first Gobblegum always free. This is why if you play offline, the Gobblegum machine costs 500 like it used to. In the classic Gobblegum category, which are free and what you'll start the game using, are infinite use abilities that you can rely on every match, which include In Plain Sight, Danger Closest, which replaces PhD Flopper, Anywhere But Here, Arms Grace, and Alchemical Antithesis. The classic Gobblegums are fairly strong and reliable. There are quite a few useful abilities in here that benefit players of all skill levels, and it's surprisingly well designed and intuitive when you first start playing the game. At level 35, the max level, the last classic Gobblegum you unlock is Alchemical Antithesis, which is without a doubt one of the strongest Gobblegums in the entire game. I find it fitting and shocking for once in Call of Duty, what you unlock at the final level is actually game-changing and useful. In too many CODs, multiplayer-wise, the guns, perks, and kill streaks were very poorly paced in the ranking system, but with the classic Gobblegums, Treyarch knocked it out of the park, and I have zero complaints with the classic Gobblegum lineup. As for that fun or not so fun monetization part I mentioned earlier, Black Ops 3 added liquid divinium as a currency that you would be able to earn randomly by purchasing anything on the map. With said divinium, you're able to spend it in Dr. Monty's factory, which is a sleek way of masking what are essentially zombies loot boxes filled with game-altering Gobblegums referred to as megas, that for lack of a better term, completely ruined the game's balance. Especially when they started adding really broken ones later in the game's life cycle. At best, you could say that they're a form of progression on top of being microtransactions, and that they give the game more variety. At worst, they, as mentioned, destroy the game's balance and make the game a very unenjoyable and a boring experience for everyone involved. An exploit that was discovered very early on was referred to as dashboarding, which simply involved closing the game's application during said match and would cause you to not lose any Mega Gobblegums, thus turning that one Perkaholic or any other Mega Gobblegum into infinite use. It should be no secret, I hated the monetization in this game with a burning passion. So let's get into my specific gripes and touch on the worst offenders. Power vacuum, near-death experience, Perkaholic, shopping free, and the annoyance of teammates giving you perks you don't want with raindrops, or on the house when there's only a 4 perk limit, having God mode in solo with near-death experience, buying every door on the map with shopping free, giving yourself all the perks on round 1 every single game, or trivializing the survival part of zombies or Easter eggs with unlimited power-ups doesn't add any substantive value to zombies as a package. If anything, it subtracts. All of this despite what your favorite influencer tries to tell you, ironically hurt the game, the community, and the replay value. It fostered a culture of constantly dashboarding and an overly aggressive push to use Mega Gobblegums within the community. This is why public matches are unplayable. Rage quitting has always been a problem in zombies, but in Black Ops 3, it's on steroids because of this system. On a whim, someone in a match can just make the game not fun for 5 rounds with Power Vacuum, literally skip an entire round for seemingly no reason, pop max ammos, buy the entire map on round 1, ruining the map progression, pop a raindrops or an on the house and give me perks I don't want before I've even bought Jug, and sometimes not even let me buy Jug at all. And because of the game's archaic 4 perk limit, if you don't join the Mega Gum Scrub cult and get all those perks through that, or hope and pray that they don't use another raindrops or on the house, you have to down yourself. That is trash game design. Another massive issue comes from dashboarding and the misconceptions surrounding it. You'll just be playing in a normal public match, or even in some of the group sessions I've been in, and then randomly the second somebody goes down, you'll see connection interrupted on your screen. And without fail, it happens nearly every game. I have to reassure people 800 times that when everybody goes down and I'm the last one left, that I'm not going to die, because I know they're hovering over that quit application button. Here's a PSA to all the folks out there, not that it'll make much of a difference at this point. The only thing that makes you lose your Mega Gobblegums is the game over screen, when somebody ends a game in a private match, or everybody dies. You can leave a match or cause a host migration by leaving in a public game, and you will not lose your Mega Gobblegums. The term dashboarding has inherently made this confusing. So the people who spread that lie that you need to close app made the game worse for everyone for years to come. Thanks, guys. Regardless, even if everybody knew that, it still wouldn't stop the host in a private match from closing app when 3 people go down, like a true coward. When a majority of zombie matches abruptly end, not with the classic game over screen, but with connection interrupted, that's not just bad game design. It's shameful, abhorrent, and excruciating. To this day, I see Reddit posts and GameFAQs threads where people legitimately think it's their internet, or that the game is broken because all they see when they play zombies with randoms is connection interrupted before round 20. Imagine the sheer number of people who stopped playing Black Ops 3 because they thought they couldn't play it. The negative impact dashboarding has had on this game, it's hard to put it into words. The fact that Treyarch never patched this makes my blood boil. It should have been fixed in the first week of launch. Zombies' core foundation and 3 main gameplay pillars were first, survival, quests/Easter eggs, and to an extent, resource management. Gobblegums outright ruin those parts of the mode in Black Ops 3. What's the challenge, and what threat do zombies pose when you can outright skip rounds, make power-up drops on nearly every zombie you kill, or right when you're low on ammo, you can just flip a switch and give yourself more? The quests, Easter egg design, and the pressure it puts on players, the stressful situations Easter eggs would put you in, and some of the genuine puzzle solving and split decisions you'd have to make in those circumstances. Now all of that fear and challenge is gone because of this erosion of what made zombies so special. If World at War and Black Ops 1 had Gobblegums, the mode would be nowhere near as revered or popular as it is today for the reasons I just laid out. When I've voiced these glaring issues with the pro-Gobblegum crowd, they would repeatedly use the phrase, "If you don't like them, well then don't use them," as if they've blessed me with some ingenious point that I hadn't considered. Well, they ignore the obvious fact that nearly everything I just listed affects your teammates in a co-op game in some way. These people also don't realize that telling you to play solo in a mode that's always been designed around co-op is an extremely stupid point, and ignores the impact Gobblegums had on some of the core design elements of this game, and of course, the dashboarding. Another thing I hear a ton is, how are they pay to win? I can get tons of Divinium easily. So let me give you a rundown on what pay to win is. The fundamental reality is that Gobblegums wouldn't be anywhere near as broken as they are if you couldn't pay real money for them. Thus, the impact they have on the game is, in massive air quotes, balanced in such a way. So it doesn't matter how much Divinium you get while playing, that just means they failed at the business part of this equation. I'm saying the outcome of having a pay-to-win system and my criticisms of it are the exact same because they wouldn't exist at all, and we wouldn't even be talking about this without the monetary aspect of it. Anyway, that's that. If you have any other arguments in defense of Gobblegums, please put them in the comments. The reality is the launch lineup of Gobblegums, including the Megas, and the intention behind their design was mostly fine, albeit a product of its time. As I mentioned, loot boxes and completely random payouts with a slew of trash filler Gobblegums and bad drop rates to fuel the grind so little Timmy can steal his mom's credit card to buy Divinium for a few spins just to get one perkaholic is obviously predatory. But when the game launched, the random nature of the Gobblegums at least kept the system partially in check for the first year. The moving Gobblegum machines and the fact that the first gum in each round cost 500 points meant that for the first 10 rounds, you had to commit to buying one, and because of the moving machines, you were pressured to take it. The design made sense and was somewhat balanced, but as the game went along, Treyarch strayed further and further away from the original design of Gobblegums and made the game more pay-to-win. Another massive issue comes in when these one-time use intended powerful abilities were extended to every match by abusing the dashboarding exploit, and Treyarch adding the most broken Gobblegums they could think of as the game's life cycle went on. Newton's Cookbook, a Gobblegum recycling mechanic introduced later on, ballooned the amount of Mega Gobblegums people had, which meant the problems just got worse and worse over time. At the start of a match, before anyone's even killed a single zombie, to see 4 idiots all huddled around a Gobblegum machine that can only be used one at a time so they can break the game in half just makes me sick. If this image doesn't perfectly highlight how poorly designed this system is, then I don't know what does. Mega Gobblegums were meant for those rare occasions when you would do an Easter egg or go for a really high round. Now, they hang over the game like a cancer. And the sad part is, if you play Black Ops 3 without Mega Gobblegums and Widow's Wine, it can be a genuinely challenging experience. These RNG-based, pay-to-win, balance-destroying microtransactions should have 100% been a stain on this game's legacy. And yet, to this day, empty-headed YouTubers, streamers, and players alike who haven't played a match of zombies without a full deck of Mega Gobblegums and Perkaholic in over 5 years prop this trash up as the best system we've ever had as far as unlocks and rewards in zombies go. These are the same people who did Divinium and lootbox style opening videos for other games around that time, garnering millions of views, essentially making hour-long advertisements for gambling. It's no different today when you COD news channels or other social media accounts make videos or tweet about the latest stupid overpriced Warzone bundle. You're doing Activision's work for them by making glorified advertisements, and you aren't even getting paid for it. Another tragedy of Gobblegums that you don't hear people talk much about anymore was that because with each DLC they had to develop these overpowered pay-to-win gums throughout Black Ops 3's lifecycle, we never got any new perks with the exception of Widow's Wine at launch. Whereas Black Ops 1 and 2 strived to add new perks with every map, even if it was only for a single map. It added a lot to the personality and experience of those games. That's yet another thing that Gobblegums ruined the prospect of. So let's go over this beat by beat and summarize all the things I've pointed out. Gobblegums ruin co-op just outright, they make the game boring, they're game-altering microtransactions, they're in loot boxes, they're overpowered, they go against nearly everything Zombies has been built up as, they hurt Black Ops 3's future, and finally, they only got worse as time went on. So, based on all of that, does this seem like a system that has any redeeming qualities? I'll leave that for you to decide, but I absolutely know where I stand. Speaking of which... Now, here's the big question. How would I fix this system and make it balanced? This is going to be a big list, so just bear with me. Firstly, mechanically, I would bring back the moving Gobblegum machines and make it so it moves just after 2 hits, so that not everyone in a co-op game can just get Gobblegums immediately in the spawn room. And for high rounds, that would put more pressure on players so they couldn't just rely on Gobblegums to clear rounds. Feeding into that last point, I would remove one of the Gobblegum slots to make it more consistent. So instead of 5 Gobblegums in a pack, there would be 4. I would remove the first Gobblegum being free hotfix that was introduced in 2017, and make it so the first purchase of the Gobblegum machine in each round scales with the rounds, just like the second and third purchases do. However, I would cap the price of the first Gobblegum at $30,000, and you would hit that price cap at round 50. I would fix the dashboarding exploit in the same way that Infinite Warfare and Black Ops 4 did. I would also allow you to remove perks in the same way Infinite Warfare did, so On the House and Raindrops don't completely ruin another person's match, or force them to down themselves if they don't want to use Mega Gobblegums. Now, in terms of specific gums, immediately, without hesitation, I would remove Round Robin, Power Vacuum, Near Death Experience, and Perkaholic. Those 4, completely gone. They have no place in the game, and in my mind, shouldn't exist in any form. I would nerf Alchemical Antithesis, Raindrop, Self-Medication, Extra Credit, and Immolation Liquidation all down to 1 activation for the sake of balance. I would reduce the timer on Shopping Free from 60 seconds down to 20 seconds, so that you couldn't buy every door on most maps while still keeping it useful. I would replace Profit Sharing with Black Ops 4's Dividend Yield. If you know what that does, you'll know it's way more balanced than Profit Sharing. I would reduce the timer on Undead Man Walking from 4 minutes to 1 minute, so you couldn't use it to completely cheese the Gorod Krovi Easter egg. I would reduce the timer on Fear and Headlights to 1 minute down from 2 minutes, so that you couldn't use it to completely cheese the Shadows of Evil Easter egg. And lastly, the only buff I have in this list is to allow you to buy ammo for wonder weapons with Secret Shopper for 10k points. With all of those changes I've laid out in place, I would actually enjoy the Gobblegums system a lot. Gobblegums would still be useful and powerful while not being intrusive and frustrating to other players, and they'd be a lot more balanced. Most importantly, it would be a way more engaging system for high rounds and low rounds, and be more in line with what Gobblegums were originally supposed to be, before Treyarch caved to sell more microtransactions. I want zombies and the industry as a whole to move forward and not be stuck in the past. And at the end of the day, with everything we've talked about when it comes to Gobblegums, if you defend the gums themselves and this system as it is, and are excited about the prospect of these game-altering microtransactions coming back in Black Ops 6, it means you're supporting the disgusting business practices that were an awful hallmark of games in this era. And I mean this genuinely, shame on you. Black Ops 3 has a fairly varied wonder weapon selection, and this is a big strength for the game as it is for many other COD Zombies games. No 2 wonder weapons feel alike, play the same, or deter from the map in any way. However, a stark contrast to Black Ops 1 and 2, where I'd more often than not find myself saying, I'd like that map way more if the wonder weapon didn't suck. All of Black Ops 3's wonder weapons feel powerful, and for the most part, are fun to use. So while Black Ops 3 isn't 100% perfect in this department, I do consider it to be a big step over the previous games. But one key point I want to make about Black Ops 3's wonder weapons that doesn't get mentioned a lot, largely because most people just didn't notice, is the fact that practically all of them are reused assets from the multiplayer. They do it in a clever enough way where it's kind of hard to spot. I greatly appreciate the effort that they put in to totally transform these weapons. It's the kind of effort we really don't see in zombies anymore. You don't realize how good it is until it's gone. A key new feature Black Ops 3 introduced in an effort to make everyone get more involved at higher rounds, and to eliminate the guy with the wonder weapon gets all the kills problem that Black Ops 1 and 2 predominantly had, Black Ops 3 introduced alternate ammo types. AATs, as I'm going to refer to them for short, by pack-a-punching your weapon a second time. Replacing the double pack-a-punch feature in Black Ops 2 that would merely give certain weapons a new attachment, most of which were fairly useless. These new ammo types, for lack of a better term, are hit or miss. First one we'll go over is Turned. It's creative, can help you camp, is semi-fun to use, and as a trade-off, the zombie you turn cannot give you points, XP, or kills on the scoreboard. Another downside is that it can end rounds when you kinda don't want it to. Sometimes you'll have to consider that when doing an Easter egg. Compared to some of the other AATs we'll be talking about, Turned is somewhat balanced because it actually has some downsides. Also to note, because of the cooldown on Turned, you'll be able to make another Turned zombie right after your first one dies, essentially giving you a permanent companion throughout a match, as long as you're shooting your gun. For those reasons, Turned is really cool actually, and I enjoy using it a lot. But I do think overall the cooldown should have been increased on it a little bit. Having a companion to help you was new for the series, and it's a welcome addition, but constantly having it active means it can clear an entire round for you, hypothetically. It's a shame because out of all these, Turned is by far the most interesting, but in Black Ops 4 and Cold War, this ability was made significantly more lame by comparison. Next one up is Blast Furnace. It's really only effective if you're training and bunching up zombies very close, because it has a very small radius. Out of all the alternate ammo types, Blast Furnace also nets you the most points, because the zombies burn for a few seconds, and each tick of that gives you 10 points on top of the 50 you'll get when the zombie dies. Blast Furnace overall is the most situational of the AATs. It can take a bit of skill to find the right zombie in a horde to maximize its effects. This one overall is on the weaker side of the AATs, but I do like the skill gap it has, but rarely do I ever find myself using it because it's only good for hoarding, and especially in co-op, you're not always doing that. Third one we'll talk about is Thunderwall. As a nod to the Thunder Gun, Thunderwall will kill anywhere from 4 to 10 zombies each time it goes off. It also has the highest chance of activating per bullet when it's off its cooldown. One big pro for Thunderwall, in my opinion, is that it's the least intrusive AAT, meaning that it doesn't get in the way of just shooting zombies with your gun. The problem with it is that it kinda, sucks. It's semi-decent to save yourself if you get caught by a few zombies, or need to make an opening to get by a horde, but compared to all the other ammo mods, it has the least purpose to exist in the game. It's not that good for camping, and there are way better options for training. Fourth one we'll talk about is Fireworks. This one is weird. When it activates, a version of your gun will appear in the center of the fireworks and shoot all the zombies around it. The weirdest thing about this AAT is, unlike the others, it actually matters what gun you use on it. It can kill a full horde in one go, or on another weapon, it may only kill 10. Similar to Turned, Fireworks does not give you kills, XP, or points, but on the right weapon, Fireworks is easily one of the most effective AATs. I saved the most controversial one for last. Deadwire is essentially a weaker version of the Wunderwaffe that can kill up to 7 zombies each time it activates. The problem with this is, the cooldown is literally just 2 seconds, meaning that Deadwire is more efficient and faster than most Wonder weapons in Black Ops 3 at clearing rounds. Deadwire, until it was buffed in late 2015, was fairly useless. It also had the same issue as the pre-patch Wunderwaffe, where the zombies that were tethered by electricity would still move around and be able to down you. It would only kill 3 zombies at a time and had an extremely long cooldown. I'm glad it was buffed, but they obviously took it way too far. Look at this relative to the other AATs. Unlike Deadwire, to make the others kill a full horde, you at least have to switch back and forth between them because of their long cooldowns. Or in the case of Blast Furnace, killing hordes is literally the only thing it's good at. Deadwire, on the other hand, is used for pretty much everything. Camping, training, Easter eggs. It invalidates all other AATs and completely messes up the balance that Treyarch was going for. I think AATs were a blessing and a curse for Black Ops 3. In terms of design, these ammo types should complement the gun they're on, not override it to the point where you're just using it to get kills. Now don't take that statement the wrong way. Games like Black Ops 4 and Cold War take this way too far in the other direction, where the abilities themselves were so nerfed that they feel irrelevant to the point where it's just a different color and icon that makes your gun do more damage to certain enemies. I want these abilities to feel useful at high rounds, which is why they should absolutely kill forever. What I would change though is increase the global cooldowns of all the ammo types and limit the player to only one at a time on just one gun. And similar to Cold War, take the randomness out of spinning for the one you want and just let people choose the one they want. Deadwire I would nerf down to killing just 5 zombies instead of 7. I would buff Thunderwall to increase its radius to kill half of a horde instead of just a quarter. And lastly, I would buff the radius on Blast Furnace so it can reliably kill an entire horde. But to compensate, I would give it by far the longest cooldown. With these small tweaks, short of adding a health cap to Black Ops 3, it would make guns feel useful for all players without making wonder weapons and traps irrelevant for high round strategies. It would make them feel like a worthwhile addition and not dominant to the point where high rounders on most maps would rather spam 3 overpowered AATs with Mule Kick over actually using traps and wonder weapons. You know, like classic zombies. After talking about the AATs, it's only fitting that we talk about the guns themselves. So this is going to be a smaller point, but can we just talk about how lame Black Ops 3's launch lineup of guns are? Needless to say, the weapons you use in a first-person shooter are pretty dang important. I know the Zombies team isn't responsible for this, but I feel it needs to be said, the guns in Black Ops 3 sound weak and wimpy, and they look like extremely generic sci-fi guns. You'd think with the rest of the game being set in the future, that would have given them the opportunity to make some really creative gun designs, but nope. Instead, the game launched with a pretty awful and boring weapon selection, and anything that they added down the line that was even remotely cool was locked behind supply drops. After first lying about supply drops not coming to Black Ops 3 at all, then lying again after they were added saying the supply drops would be cosmetic only. In the case of Zombies, a select few guns would only be featured on certain maps after Eisendrache. However, a good chunk of those fun weapons would never be in Zombies, much to the dismay of pretty much everyone because Black Ops 3's base weapon selection is just that bad. Is it any wonder why the weapon packs are by far the most popular mods on the Steam Workshop? One other small thing I want to mention too is the really annoying and pointless slowdown mechanic when you fire LMGs in this game. Because of this alone, I almost never pick up or use any LMGs in this game. Not that I'd want to anyway, because, like I said, generic and boring. Other than the 45 Dredge, which I will give a shout out to because it's a 6-round burst LMG, and that at least was something different at the time. Lastly, in this section, I want to talk about the MR6 and why it sucks so much as a starting pistol. In Black Ops 2, thankfully, because of the flashback levels in the campaign, Treyarch ported a majority of the weapons from Black Ops 1 into Black Ops 2's engine. Hence why the M1911 was the main starting pistol in Black Ops 2. Now, I want you to imagine, instead of bringing back the classic M1911 in Black Ops 2, Treyarch instead took the 5.7, which was designed to be a high damage pistol with 20 rounds in each clip, but instead gave it 8 rounds per clip, extremely low damage, and made it shoot grenades when you put it in the pack-a-punch. And that was the starting pistol. It would feel terrible, and it would be out of place. That's exactly what the MR6 in Black Ops 3 feels like. In Black Ops 3's multiplayer, the MR6 fills almost the exact same role as the 5.7 did. High damage, once again 20 rounds in the magazine, and the look, sound, and animation on the MR6 reflect that. The MR6, unlike the 5.7 though, has a pretty harsh fire rate cap, and this was very lazily carried over into Black Ops 3 Zombies. And all of this culminates into making the MR6 very unsatisfying to use. In Black Ops 2, once again because of those flashback levels in the campaign, that's why you saw the Uzi, AK-74U, AK-47, M16, Galil, M14, and the Olympia all making appearances in BO2 Zombies. It seems with Black Ops 3, for whatever reason, Treyarch did not want to put similar effort in, and the game suffers for it with a weaker gun selection, as we already mentioned, and quite possibly the worst feeling starting pistol in all of Zombies. For as long as Black Ops 3 has been out, it has had some serious issues with its lobby and invite system. And these aren't little problems either. These are game-breaking problems at all times. For some reason, at least on the Xbox version, which is what I play on, if the application is left open for too long, the ability to send invites just fails to work, and nobody can join your lobby. Sometimes it happens immediately when booting up the game, or within minutes, and other times it happens after ending a match. Whatever the reasoning for it is, the bottom line is players cannot send invites, can't join lobbies, and it always results in having to completely reset the game. This is an issue that has existed for almost the entirety of the 8 years this game has been out. It was never fixed, and I know this is a well-known problem because anyone I play with who can't join or invite somebody immediately knows to reset their game. It's an annoyance that is really embarrassing that Treyarch never took the time to fix it while this game was during its life cycle. And another thing that plagues the game, even when playing solo, is the at times poor hit detection. There's something about this game that's difficult to quantify. The best explanation is when you used to play Black Ops 1 online, and you were off host. All hit scan weapons have dodgy hit registration. At times you feel like you're shooting zombies or quest objects and the bullets are going right through them. This is especially noticeable when the zombies get up close. The amount of times I've tried to shoot a zombie directly in my face and the game just doesn't register my shots often gets me killed. And this happens even when playing offline or in solo. This is completely unacceptable, but the problem is so inconsistent that it's difficult to pin down what's the cause of the issue, other than it just being bad netcode. Black Ops 3 has what is, honestly, the most unique form of movement we've ever had in zombies. That is due to a movement technique that was patched in the multiplayer, but left unchanged in zombies. And it's the backbone of how most good players get around the maps in this game. I'm of course talking about the G-slide. This movement is a little easier to do on PC, or if you have paddles on your controller, but it's extremely useful regardless. This is one of the aspects of BO3 that I'm actually going to give high praise to. You can immediately tell a good player from a bad player by whether they start G-sliding as soon as the match begins. G-slides are also very useful when training. It, surprisingly, takes a lot of skill to be able to juggle zombies and G-sliding around hordes and corners. Now, one aspect of it that I actually didn't know until recently, courtesy of EZP40's latest video on BO3's weapon mobility, link in the description, it's a great video by the way, go watch it, is that G-slides are faster than the base BO3 sprinting and movement, but when you have stamina up, this changes. Regardless of the weapon class, you actually move faster sprinting than you do with the G-slide. But when you consider that your sprint recharges while you're G-sliding, stamina becomes even better than it already was. One of the things I've heard a ton of people say over the years is that stamina is useless because of the G-slide. I'm glad I can prove all those people wrong today. Anyway, G-slides are a very good thing for the game overall, and this is one area where I'm in full agreement with the community. I'd love to see G-slides or something like it come back. Movement in Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2 took a lot of skill, but G-slides in Black Ops 3 just added an extra layer to movement that I feel hasn't been replicated since. It gave me crippling depression when I played Black Ops 4 for the first time and realized they nerfed sliding into the abyss. Simple skill gaps like this are important in zombies. It seems like Treyarch and modern game devs in general are trying to take things like this away from us to dumb the game down. It's exactly like how they took all the skill out of the point system. Treyarch, please bring it back. These are things that will only help your game in the long run. Well, I would have something here when discussing theater mode, but it doesn't work. At least not on the Xbox, which is the only platform I play on. I have no idea if this works on any other. If it did, that would be very frustrating because I could have used it for this video. But yeah, it's just a completely broken feature that doesn't work. To send this game off, Black Ops 3 was disappointing on many levels due to poor mechanics, rushed development, and scrapped ideas that can not only be applied to zombies, but Black Ops 3 as a whole. Whether it was key people leaving Treyarch between Black Ops 2 and 3, or having to develop for new hardware at the time, the campaign, multiplayer, and zombies don't feel very Black Ops at all. And it's apparent that Treyarch felt restricted having to use the Black Ops name when they made this game, and I can only imagine how they feel now, still tied to Black Ops, after over 11 years. The crux of Black Ops 3 is that a lot of the problems people have with modern zombies actually started with this game. But even after everything I've said, I can still appreciate that this game met a certain level of quality throughout its season. And even though Revelations didn't live up to Origins or Moon, the game still went out on a high note.
But wait! There's more!
Zombies Chronicles was announced completely out of the blue in 2017 on May 4th, and released on May 16th. I think I can speak for most of us who were there when I say it caught me completely off guard. There had been rumors of a DLC 5 filled with remasters for a long time, throughout all of Black Ops 3's life cycle, and some even before the game came out. Although I don't think any of the people who said this was coming had any clue what they were talking about, more so that they were just accidentally right. Zombies Chronicles would cost $30 USD and contain 8 remastered maps, completely rebuilt from the ground up. The biggest addition to the World at War maps is, unfortunately in a way, their biggest drawback. Being that zombies had progressed a lot since the days of World at War, most of the innovations of Pack-a-Punch per se are missing. The solution, and in some ways the problem, is the Gobblegum machine, being as it's the only way to acquire Pack-a-Punch weapons or alternate ammo types for your guns. The Wonder Fizz being put on all these maps makes more sense, as the 4-perk limit wouldn't let it be too exploited. The issue is that you need to either get lucky with your Divinium to earn the pack of Gobblegums, or spend real money on tons of Divinium to be able to enjoy this innovation. Besides the need for certain guns on the World at War maps, other than the concept themselves, all of the other maps operate alright with this system. No more different than the Giant does. But at least that map had the sense to not put the Gobblegum machine in the spawn, so there would be at least a round or two before all progression is thrown out. Each of the map remasters visually are stunning and do a great job at being graphical upgrades to all of their previous versions. But they don't all play the same. Nox's spawn system is painfully slow, which I understand is done to emulate the slower type of gameplay from the original, but this just doesn't mesh well with BO3's mechanics. And it ends up for you just waiting for zombies to get even close enough to the map for you to shoot them on low rounds, and high rounds taking way longer than they should, because zombies take 50% of their time just spawning onto the map proper. Verrückt fares much better than all of its previous versions, being that the Wonder Waff replaces the Winter's Howl in the mystery box. In addition, the layout actually serves the more aggressive zombies in this game, because the original was meant to be very hard and a fast-paced experience. The BO3 remaster emulates this type of gameplay perfectly. Not a whole lot else to say. Shi No Numa's remaster has one thing actually removed from it that is actually a good idea. With the more aggressive zombies of this game, the middle path to the storage has been drained of its water, making it much safer for the player to get to this location, because the zombies are not as nearly slowed down by the water enough in this game as they were in previous. One probably unintended change that I like is that most of the water on this map can now be bypassed by being able to G-slide through the shallow parts of the water. This opens up the map so much more, and for me, makes it play much better. It may take some trial and error to learn, but once you know where to start sliding in the water, it will totally change how you play Shi No Numa. This is a good example of the skill gap part of G-sliding that I talked about earlier. If you don't like this map because of the water, then this could totally change your opinion on it. Give it a try. As we get out of the World at War section of Chronicles, I just want to reiterate how annoying it is that across all 3 of these maps, the only way to pack a punch and get AATs is through Gobblegums. If they added a Wonder Fizz to these maps, especially Nocturne and Toten, which didn't even have perks originally, then there's no reason why they couldn't have added a Pack-a-Punch machine to these maps, or a side Easter egg which Pack-a-Punches, or, to take it further, even double Pack-a-Punches every gun in the box. To play devil's advocate slightly, as an unintended side effect, it's kind of a cool gameplay shakeup for classic and no-gun categories on zombie records compared to other maps, but it's also entirely possible that if they added a way to pack, the site would have just made a no pack-a-punch category instead, so it's a moot point. Now, Kino for the most part is alright, pretty close to the original. Unfortunately though, the first thing you'll notice when you spawn in is the censorship of the symbol you're not allowed to say on YouTube, but I will show it for a side-by-side comparison. Another point too, and this applies to every Chronicles map with Ultimus on it, they even censored Richtofen's armband, except instead of replacing the no-no symbol with the Iron Eagle like seen here, it's just left comically blank, and I don't know why. It looks really stupid. Another issue too is that the Nova Crawlers aren't impacted by Widow's Wine, meaning that when they hit you, they don't stop hitting you. It's really annoying and it's seemingly a pretty big oversight. Aside from those things, Kino is perfectly fine in this game. Ascension is odd. It's as if the devs didn't realize what would happen if they introduced a mechanic from a previous game into this one. The monkeys seem to be very selective in what perks they go after. And speaking of perks, the Wonderfizz has only 2 perks in it for some reason. Double Tap, which wasn't even in the original, and Deadshot. The fact that these are the only 2 perks in it almost defeats the purpose of having it at all, because no one is going to pick Deadshot over Double Tap 2. And even more bizarre, the monkeys aren't programmed to attack Wonderfizz, so if you buy Double Tap, you'll never have to worry about losing it. Another big issue with the monkeys that they totally screwed up is that the perk flashing when the monkeys are attacking a perk machine is way more low-key, and it no longer makes a sound when the perk icon is flashing on your HUD, all of which take away from the point of the monkey round in the first place. One hilarious side effect of the Gobblegums is that there are guys who will always play this map with the power off and use Gobblegums to pack and get perks because they're so bad at zombies that they genuinely can't handle the monkeys. It's hilarious. One small thing I want to praise and highlight, because we're about to talk about it again in the next map, but it's really cool how they remade the Matryoshka dolls and the sickle for this one map inside of Chronicles. I appreciate that attention to detail. Now Shangri-La is a mess. The BO3 devs absolutely butchered this map, and far more so than Ascension, really didn't think how their new mechanics would mesh with the old ones. The shrink ray in this version of the map was totally botched. The baby zombies now have full collision when you try to run into them to kick them. This is in stark contrast to the BO1 version, where you would go through them like butter. This has a side effect of allowing the baby zombies to hit you way more often than they would ever in Black Ops 1. This makes BO3's signature and only new perk, Widow's Wine, which replaces PhD Flopper, worthless if you have the Wonder Weapon on this map. This was really poorly thought out, and it's a really bad design choice on every conceivable level. I honestly believe they didn't playtest this. On top of the hit speed and the spawn rate changes present in BO3, it makes the shrink ray feel neutered in this version. You'll be kicking into a horde of zombies only for that process to be so slow that you'll be getting hit in the back before you even kill your horde. If this version of the map was your only exposure to this weapon, I totally see why you'd think it's not really that good. In Black Ops 1, however, this was truly the best wonder weapon in that game in terms of efficiency. The changes made to the shrink ray, unintentionally or not, pretty much single-handedly ruined BO3 Shangri-La for me. It went from a map in BO1 that I could enjoy but didn't care much for, to a map that I cannot stand at all. Another small note here, but why didn't they remake Spike Moors? Nobody likes trip mines in BO3. Their damage is inconsistent, you can only have 2 at a time, and when they actually do hit a zombie, their damage is piss poor. If Treyarch went through the trouble of remaking the Matryoshka dolls and the sickle just for Ascension, why didn't the Spike Moors on Shang get the same treatment? It's honestly jarring. Shang in BO3 is a bad remaster that combines new problems with no remedies for the existing issues Shang already had. The pack system being one of the worst offenders. Based on the fact that nobody wants to play this map, I think most would agree with me on this. Moon, for the most part, is an improvement over the original, but there are a few balancing issues here and there. The glass all over the map now is much harder to break, only being able to be broken by grenades. But you know what that leads to? Widow's Wine once again ruining another map. Boy, they really didn't think how this perk would affect so many things, did they? It's funny because in the original, damn near anything could break the glass. Now you can spam ray guns and Mustang and Sally to your heart's content, and they will not break. It's a good change for the most part. So this leads to either foregoing this perk altogether, or having to throw out your Widow's Wine grenades before entering the labs, or spawn. The Moon Man is made a total joke by the AATs, as he'll die in one hit from practically all of them, which really eliminates the threat he provided in the original in many ways. This one I'm kind of mixed on. He was really annoying in the original, but that was kind of the point, so I don't know. The only other real Negative is that the hacker, duplication, and infinite air glitch has been patched out, which, while yes, they were glitches, they did make the original map more fun. So I'd say it's a bit of a shame that they're gone. But the silver lining is that this Easter egg is possible to be completed solo, as difficult as that is. But giving solo players the option to go for it if they want to is a welcome update. Now, Origins, oh boy. Okay, this is going to be one of the more unpopular opinions, but BO3 Origins is an absolute disgrace to the original. Firstly, the map, despite being in a more graphically superior game, it just looks worse. All of the grit and unique atmosphere from the original map is lost. A lot of this is due to the washed out and overly bright lighting that's everywhere. While some of the textures and effects may be improved, the overall map doesn't have the same look, feeling, or vibe as the original, and feels much more cartoony by comparison. The Pap camo also doesn't look as good either, which is a real letdown because the original camo has become one of the most iconic in the years since Origins came out. And a lot of the uniqueness about weapons are lost too. All the map exclusive box weapons from BO2 are gone. The map exclusive LMG has lost its interesting pack ability to have ricochet shots, which is lame. The stabs feel absolutely botched in this version of the map. They shoot way slower and the charge shots take way longer too across the board. These changes especially hurt the fire and lightning stabs because those are two that you would rarely use the charge shots on and mostly spam. Here's a side-by-side fire rate difference and the charge shot difference. It's pretty huge. If the fire rate change hurt the lightning and fire, then the charge shot changes really hurt the ice and wind. Considering the hit speed of the zombies we touched on earlier, making the charge shots take longer seems really backwards and asinine. Because of this, they're way less versatile. I also want to specifically highlight how they absolutely massacred the fire staff. First off, they changed the primary fire to this weird, awful burst. They also nerfed the damage of the charge shot for some reason. It used to be a one charge shot kill well past the 50s. Now, it doesn't even do that into the 40s. This, to my knowledge, is the only staff to receive a damage nerf, and it makes absolutely zero sense. The fire staff is downright terrible in this version of the map. I don't know to what extent these staff changes were intentional, but if they hypothetically all were, then I have no idea what they were thinking. And all of these changes should have been reverted shortly after Chronicles came out. The torches, which are supposed to be lit when you fire at them for the upgrade, are always lit for some reason, making it very confusing if you're doing it properly. But the worst offense this version does is how they absolutely broke the Panzer Soldat. I have no idea why they made him nigh invincible. He takes far too many shots to kill, so unpacked bullet weapons are completely useless. So what this means is you either need to have a staff before round 8 or get a packed weapon before then, which isn't the easiest thing, which leads to, you guessed it, Gobblegums spam. Look, I love Origins. I played it the day it came out. Yes, I'm that old. And I see all the time Zoomers who are playing this version for the first time, and it pains me because it's just worse. Do yourself a favor if you're on Xbox or PC, and play BO2 Origins instead. One final side note for Chronicles, this whole DLC is an unintended middle finger to Revelations, because having basically all the maps in the same game now totally undercuts what that map was going for, and it basically makes the whole thing even more pointless than it already was. Not that I care, because that map sucks, but it is funny. It's been over 8 years since Black Ops 3 came out and over 7 years since Chronicles. That's a significant amount of time in anyone's life. With the twists and turns we've seen zombies and Call of Duty as a whole go through these last 5 years, post-Modern Warfare 2019, I can't help but think the glory days of zombies are well and truly behind us. From 2015 to 2019, in the aftermath of Black Ops 3 and during, we got some of the best content we've ever had in zombies. Infinite Warfare and World War II proved that developers who kept to the core foundation of zombies can make maps that not only rival Treyarch's maps, but put them to shame in some cases. Between Director's Cut and Zombies in Spaceland for Infinite Warfare, to the amazing character unlocks and the Final Reich in World War II. Black Ops 4 is a very controversial game even to this day, but just as an experiment, bear with me, if we take Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 and we count those games remakes plus the Giant as their own original maps, we got all of World at War, all of Black Ops 1, Mob of the Dead, Origins, and Nuketown from Black Ops 2, and high quality original maps from the Chaos Story and Premise. Say what you will about Blundell, but I know for a fact that man gave the community everything they wanted and then some. He well and truly cared about zombies, and it should be a tragedy to all of us that Black Ops 4's reception, experimentation, and its development struggles are what brought him down and got the Chaos Story cancelled. Even if you don't like Black Ops 4, you can't help but respect the amount of ambition that game had. 8 maps, remakes of classics, juggling 2 storylines, new game modes, custom mutations, difficulty options, bots and zombies, and a more extensive creative class. The list goes on. I just want to bring up this photo here. Now, memes have been made about this, and at the time it was quaint, but looking at it now, to reiterate my point, I can't help but think we don't know how good we truly had it at the time. There's one final thought experiment I want to leave you with. Imagine if Black Ops 3 ended with Revelations. That means no Chronicles and no mod tools. Would this game be anywhere near as revered or remembered as it is today? Its base maps and season were solid enough, but Chronicles and mod tools elevated Black Ops 3 to a game that is legendary, and stands well and truly above the games that came before it in terms of content alone. However, to me, as we've discussed today, I just see so much wasted potential and bizarre design decisions that if addressed, Black Ops 3 could have been one of the best games of all time, based off of zombies alone. And that's why I made this video. It's why this game is so painful to me, because it was so damn close. And call me a pessimist, but I don't think zombies will ever reach the height or sheer potential again. It's why Black Ops 3, while a game I like, I certainly don't love. Pretty sad note to end it on, but I'm still playing zombies at least once a month, Black Ops 3 included in that, of course, but I am worried about the future of zombies. I don't have faith that Kevin Drew and his team will deliver on Black Ops 6. I barely touched on it in this video, but when it comes to Cold War, I felt like that game really missed the point of zombies. And trust me, I know that sounds pretentious. Starting with Black Ops 4, to a small extent to where we are now, Zombies has lost its way. It's lost its core features of its once revered and addictive gameplay. It's lost its heart, soul, and detail in its story and environments. And most importantly, it's betrayed what Zombies started as. A fun project of love for the developers to put all their cool ideas into, that would have been completely out of place in the other 2 standard modes you'd see in a Call of Duty. But the sad part is, just like how we used to feel about those modes, Call of Duty now feels like another product and not a passion. Going more in depth, fundamentally with Cold War, its biggest weakness by far and away is the maps. There's absolutely no doubt about it. If Black Ops 6 can deliver on that front, it'll be at least an above average zombies game without any other changes from Cold War. But what we want is an amazing game. What we need is a clear vision with focus. Not have a story that's delivered through lame audio logs that only 0.01% of the community will actually listen to. Not have gameplay that's so brain dead that you can spawn in with a shotgun and use only that to easily get to whatever round you want. Bring back the classic point system so you're actually rewarded for using certain types of weapons and playing intelligently. Make the Wonder Fizz how it used to be so you don't completely ruin the concept of perk locations and perk runs when you go down. Not have these lame map intros where you come in a helicopter or barrel into the map on a jeep, because it ruins the tone of the mode and the feeling of survival. Not having custom classes and zombies and spawning in with whatever gun you want. Having meaningful progression that isn't pay to win or just mindless camo grinding. Make actual soundtracks and ambient noises for maps once again. Having quests that aren't just handouts to bad players and actually have steps within them that move the story forward and change the map in dynamic ways, like what Black Ops 4 was trying to do. And make completing those quests rewarding to the player, and not just a lame calling card or a weapon I could have immediately brought into the spawn room, or boosting my weapon's rarity level causing power creep that makes the game even more boring than it already was. After that laundry list, needless to say, I'm extremely fearful based on its success, Treyarch will double down on the things that didn't work. And I could go on and on about Cold War, but to keep it short, it does have far more issues than just being too easy, as we've just established. Treyarch should have learned from Cold War and make a game that's more accommodating to casual and hardcore players alike, and give zombies some of its soul once again. It's abundantly clear that regardless of how you feel about Black Ops 4, Cold War was a massive drop in terms of quality. You could contribute that to time or the pandemic, but after 4 years, they need to lock in with this game because for many people, Black Ops 6 is the last chance they have before any goodwill that's left is completely flushed down the toilet. I know this isn't a Cold War video, but damn, you'd think it was a gang war the way people in this community pit BO3 and Cold War against each other. Black Ops 3 is clearly a way better game in spite of what I've said in this video. But I lose brain cells when I hear both sides of that debate talk. Zombies does need to go back to something like Black Ops 3, but don't make it so damn pretentious and broken for God's sake. Call of Duty in general has been in an incredibly dire state since the Modern Warfare reboot came out in 2019. Like, dire to the point where I'd say this is easily the worst stretch of time we've ever had in COD history. Unfinished games, character skins, and tracers for $20 each. Some of them are even higher than that now. Terrible maps and multiplayer, SBMM, or what we should be calling it, algorithm-based matchmaking in non-ranked playlists. A gutted create-a-class system, campy and slow gameplay, Warzone completely eclipsing multiplayer and zombies now, and some really terrible campaigns that most people think are good for some reason. People used to say that COD was the same game every year. Even during the so-called golden era, you'd hear it all the time. But now, I genuinely feel like that's actually true. COD feels like Madden every year now, even to the point where the community is echoing that empty-headed fanbase. You have those brain-dead clowns on Twitter actually praise the copy-pasted backgrounds where your character walks at nothing. They praise calling cards and charms as rewards, and buy every new bundle that comes out without thinking. And just like Madden fans, they call you broke if you criticize this dumb system, and don't want to drain your entire bank account on microtransactions. So, it's not just the games that are too far gone, but the entire community seemingly now too. That's also partly because the real fans of this franchise left a long time ago. But I digress. I'm at the point where it's been over 5 years and I sincerely doubt that any part of COD will ever be good again, because people will continue to eat it up no matter how bad it gets. Anyway, I'm rambling now.
Alright, I'm finally done. Can't believe it's over, my god. If you need to contact me, I'm on Twitter. That's about it. Thank you for watching, and good night.